G'day mate, 40 here. So, I heard a rumor. Yep. Who needs friends who never show? I'll tell you what you want to know. I could have saved a broken heart if I'd found out long ago. I'm just thinking about those lonely nights when I waited for your call till I found out all my friends were right. I didn't know you at all. I heard a rumor. They say you got a broken heart. Now it seems they're telling me you've changed your wicked ways. But should I give you a second chance? Baby, I'm too afraid. So you realize what hurt you made and the love you threw away. How can I forgive or soon forget? It's never going to be the same. Okay, so if I do a show on taking someone down, on destroying someone, I'm far more likely to have an audience than if I do a show on building someone up or building up institutions, right? Like, who wants to hear a show about how do we restore trust in American institutions? And I'm talking here about trust rightfully earned. I'm not talking about misplaced trust. So are you all excited for a show about how to restore trust in American institutions? So if you're not interested in renewing trust in America's institutions, then you're a nihilist, right? You need institutions for a country to run. But institutions never going to meet all your fantasies. They're not going to meet all your needs, right? They're blunt instruments. They're slow-moving instruments. But there's no alternative. You have to have institutions for a country to run. So if you're more interested in information that tears down institutions, debunks institutions, humiliates institutions than you are in building up institutions, then you're a nihilist. You're far more interested in destroying than building anything up. And I've come to the reluctant understanding that most people who are interested in distant politics, most people who are going to watch a YouTube live stream on politics are far more interested in destroying than in building anything up. If you're more interested in hearing stories about voter fraud than you are in building up vote integrity, then you're probably a nihilist. So I'm reluctantly coming to realize that most people who are going to tune into this sort of live stream are going to be far more interested in destroying than in building up. That, oh, we can make a better world by, spiritually blowing up institutions and elites. And it just doesn't work that way. And we have a say on who our elites will be, who we choose to watch, who we choose to fund, what TV shows we view, what magazines and newspapers we subscribe to, what churches or synagogues we attend, where we donate our time and money, where we give our attention, what books we read. We're voting for our elites. So we have the ability to shape our elites, to select our elites, and to influence our institutions. So I know that's not nearly as exciting as telling you that the elites hate us and want us dead. Oh, thank God Laponius is here. He likes stories of redemption and inclusion. Wow, Laponius, I heard a rumor. But now it seems they're telling me you've changed your wicked ways. But should I give you a second chance? Baby, I'm too afraid. So you realize what hurt you made and the love you threw away. How can I forgive or soon forget? It's never going to be the same. So Laponius Maximus, I mean, you are the quintessential American. So are you more interested in stories about voter fraud or in hearing about ways to improve vote integrity? Are you more interested in tearing down the elites, or perhaps selecting better elites or encouraging our elites to behave in better ways? Are you more interested in building up or in destroying? Like, if I ever lose Laponius, I've lost America. I might as well just take down my fancy lighting, my $600 microphone, my software, my Streamlabs, and just walk away and return to meditation and spiritual contemplation. All right, Laponius Maximus Meridius is all about hearing solutions. So how do we renew trust rightfully earned? I'm not talking putting our trust misplaced in American institutions. This is a dialogue between Martin Gurri, my new favorite thinker. He's from Cuba, former CIA analyst. His job was to read newspapers and media around the world for the CIA, and he's in dialogue with populist Yuval Levine. Does anything represent populism better than Yuval Levine? So how do we restore trust in our democratic American institutions? So the recent sacking of the Capitol Hill building can stand as Exhibit A for what transpires in a democracy under conditions of profound distrust, writes Martin. The public is now alienated from government and from the electoral process. It has considerable doubts about the legitimacy of the American electoral process. Much of the public now stands eternally against and at any moment can coalesce into a nihilistic mob. And this is true for the left and for the right.
Have you guys seen this?
My son up from school witnessed a bullying episode, rang the principal, and I want people to know, parents, educators, teachers, this is the effect that bullying has.
I'm gonna deal with them.
This is what bullying does. So can you please educate your children, your families, your friends? Because all it takes is for one more instant, and you wonder why kids are killing themselves.
So this mom has a son who's 9 years old, who's struggling because he's being picked on for his dwarfism. He wants to kill himself, or he wants to kill others. Look at that.
You don't even do anything. Everything's good. Going to tell me in the class.
He's got murder in his heart, either towards himself or towards others. He wants to kill himself or kill others in retaliation. He feels like a helpless victim. And this mother's at her wit's end. She doesn't know what to do. She feels helpless. Now he's saying he wants someone to kill him. He just wants to stop the suffering. The mom thinks that by showing this video that empathy is going to sweep across the world, and all of a sudden people are going to be kind to people with dwarfism or her son or other people with disabilities. She says she's told the principal.
Any advice or support or anything that other parents or families have done to help raise disability awareness and education within the school so that this
It's not about disability awareness. It's not about showing videos of a child suffering. It's not about memorializing someone who has killed themselves or giving a name from a victim of bullying. I know this is bad. Look at this kid. Look at he's in torment right now.
Family, I want people to educate their children. The whole anti-bullying shit isn't working.
Okay, she's right. It's not working. Anti-bullying is not working. What does anti-bullying do? Anti-bullying is an attempt to make the world nice, to change the world around kids like Quaden, rather than empowering Quaden to be totally unfazed by the mean words and actions of others. Do you realize the solution here is not to make the world nice, because that's never going to happen. The solution is to empower Quaden to stop suffering. So when people come over and pat him on the head and call him short, he does have the capacity to brush that off, to not give those words any power. This is what counseling focuses on. It's helping Quaden adjust to the harsh reality rather than attempting to change reality. Do you realize the only message Quaden is hearing right now is that reality around you, the people around you need to change. This has got to stop. And it's not stopping. That's why he's feeling despair, and that's why kids kill themselves. It's heartbreaking.
And it's the constant bullying, the name calling, like obviously pointing out his difference. So now we have a very severely suicidal child who's sick of the bullying. That is every single day that he attends school or is in public. It's every single day, and we're sick of it. So
okay, I'll tell you why it's every day. It's because every time kids are mean to him, he gets upset. And when he gets upset, there's a payoff. And when there's a payoff, they continue to be mean. That's not just in school. That's going to be in the neighborhood. It's going to be in the mall. If you wonder why it's every single day, it's because the more upset you get, the more fun they have. The more fun they have, the meaner they are. The meaner they are, the more upset you get. So therefore, the solution is to stop getting upset.
So the next person that does bully or harass or discriminate against him better watch the f*** out. I'm serious.
So what, the solution is to kill the people that are joking? To kill them? Is that the solution? Or to go legal because they're trying to make a joke? This is not the solution. The solution is to build up Quaden's emotional resilience to where he can actually be comfortable in his own skin, to be happy with who he is and how he is, to stop living for the approval.
Right. So this is similar to things I talk about on this show all the time. People want compassion and understanding from others, and they're 100 times more interested in eliciting compassion, understanding, and nice treatment from other people than they are in learning how to treat themselves nicely, how to treat themselves with compassion, how to relate to themselves with understanding. People like me Like I yearn for attention, recognition, validation, and praise from other people. Absolutely. I would love to have 1 million live viewers right now. But what's considerably more challenging for me is to give myself that attention, give myself that recognition, to give myself that compassion and understanding. That takes a lot of hard work. But once you start to develop that, then you can give that to yourself. And I don't depend upon my chat audience to give me validation and recognition. It's nice when it occurs, but it's far more important to learn to give this to yourself. When you're distressed by how other people speak to you or treat you, it's a lot easier to focus on what's wrong with them. But the best solution is to develop your own emotional resilience.
To not demand that other people stop making jokes, but to be able to take and make a joke about himself. He can learn to laugh. He can learn to actually be proud of who he is, to understand that there are funny things about him, that it is different.
Well, no, ignoring it doesn't solve the problem. How does that address bullying?
And ignoring it is not the solution. I'm not suggesting ignoring it.
And that's exactly what I'm doing now. Every time it happens, I'll be doing a live video so that people know.
Poor
so
thing.
hopefully we can make some changes so that this doesn't happen to another family, and hopefully we don't lose another young innocent life to bullying.
If you want to keep Quaden alive, there's only one solution. I'll tell you what the solution's not. If you tell Quaden that the solution to his problem is that people are going to start...
Okay, and no, that video was not fake. I know that was brought up on my show back in February of last year, and it's simply not true. And it's such a heinous thing to say when something's not true. People saying, oh, he's an 18-year-old. No, he's a 9-year-old bullied kid. Yes, he's interested in acting, but that bullying reaction, that desire to kill himself, that's not acting. That's been present in his life for years. He has a horrible physical, medical condition. And the same people who are so quick to want to believe that that video was fake, the same people who are telling us that COVID was just the flu, bro, that, stop the steal, the 2020 election was rigged, that QAnon is real, that 5G radiation towers are, impurifying our vital bodily essences. It's the same sort of, essentially boils down to victimhood thinking, that because the elites hate us and want us dead, that the system is tilted against us. Therefore, participation in politics or in anything wider than ourselves is just absolutely useless. And my problems are not my fault. My problems are the fault of some, shadowy elite.
Be nice because all the government officials are going to enforce it. That is no solution for him. You're setting him up for a certain failure. And then he's going to realize that your promises are broken and it's not sustainable. And therefore, you're going to increase his chance for ending his life. The only solution for Quaden is to learn to be happy.
No. Election fraud is not the equivalent of believing that this kid's video is fake, but it does seem to correlate. Right? Correlation, not causation, but the same people who believe that this kid's video was fake, they're the same people who tend to instinctively disbelieve everything that the media says. They tended to disregard COVID. They tended to believe that the 2020 election was fake. There does seem to be a correlation. So no, election fraud accusations are not on par with denying the reality of this kid's video, but they do seem to correlate. And so Ricardo has been an absolute rock and foundation of this show since about April of 2018. And why is mass distrust in the media the problem of the distrusting audience and not the lying institution? I think that is a great question. And let's unpack that. So I certainly don't want misplaced trust in our institutions, but there is no alternative but to have institutions, and you really want to have trust in your own institutions, but you want it rightly placed. So how can we develop elites and institutions that are accountable to us and who are incentivized to act in our best interests? So I'm trying to do a show here about building up more than tearing down. And Ricardo, yeah, he's like a fascinating character, vital to my show. And hence he's played an important role in my life. But guess what? At certain levels of interaction with Ricardo and I hate each other. Yeah, I don't like using the word unpack, but I've been contaminated by the way the elites speak, so I've taken on some elite speak there. I hate the word. Lots to unpack, bro. But yeah, it's interesting. At a certain level, certain constancy of interaction, Ricardo and I very quickly come to hate each other. But at a slightly, just change that interaction a little bit, and we love each other. And I don't think that's unique. I think there are a lot of people out there who, at a certain level of interaction, we very quickly come to hate them. But just tweak that interaction a little bit, and we love them. Like, some people are unbearable if you see them every day. But if you just see them once every 2 weeks, they're fantastic. Yeah, Ricardo says, I agree, it's strange, would like to understand that better. Yeah, it's a romantic comedy, yeah, between Ricardo and I. But it's so true. Like, if we talk to each other every day, if we, go back and forth what we're thinking about, we hate each other really, really quickly. But if we just talk on the chat, talk, on occasion, then, we're great. We're the best of buds. So sometimes just tweaking some interactions just a little bit, and instead of like hating someone and say cutting them out of your life, you just tweak the interaction a little bit. And instead of hating someone, you can just love them. Now, I love this psychologist here. So all the celebrity attention was on Paul, Quaden, Bayles, and how can we get people to be nice? What's a lot more difficult and challenging is, instead of blaming other people and trying to get other people to be nice, instead, how can we build up our own emotional resilience? So that when Ricardo or Laponius tweak me a little bit, I don't, lose my yarmulke, but I can enjoy it instead of hating it.
With who he is and how he is, to embrace his disability, to embrace his dwarfism, to be able to have a response to those who make a joke about him, to help him learn to laugh, to help change his belief system. Don't you realize Mental Health 101? It's not what people say to you that disturbs you emotionally. It's what you think about what they say. And right now, Quaden and his mom and his sister believe that there is no right that people are mean. They have no right to be rude. They have no right to be jerks. They have no right to point out the disability. And because they have rigid, demanding beliefs, they have disturbances. We need to change those beliefs. Change them to say, you know what, people are going to be rude. People are not going to understand. They're going to be ignorant, and they're going to make fun of their son's dwarfism. So what do? You don't demand that people don't make fun of it. You embrace it. You want to make fun of me? That's fine. I'd like you to not, but if you're going to, I understand. I can make and take a joke about myself. Emotional resilience is the only solution, because it's the only empowering solution for this kid. Quaden, or Quaden's mom, if you're listening to me.
Now, we can focus on emotional resilience, and that doesn't mean that you don't, say, put some distance between yourself and other people you find annoying. It doesn't mean that you, say, minimize contact with certain annoying people. It doesn't mean that you don't take steps to ensure your own mental health by, limiting your interactions with some people.
I personally want to help you, Quaden. I can help you be so emotionally strong, so mentally tough, so secure in who you are and how you are, that you're actually going to hope people make a joke about you. You can actually hope, like a boxer needs a good sparring partner in the ring to get better. I can help you grow so strong in your resilience that you hope there's jerks in your life so you can practice your skills. You're going to be strong, bro. And someday you're going to realize just how strong you are, and you're going to.
Okay, so the mother initially did not take too well to that video. She was kind of offended. She felt like this psychologist was criticizing her parenting skills, and so that was her initial reaction. But then she eventually reached out to him. She was able to open up and open herself to see, maybe he's got a point here, And so that psychologist started working with her and her son on a regular basis and seemed to have made a profound difference. So it's much more compelling, right? We'd rather read and hear about a titillating story, how this was all some major manipulation, that this was some kind of con, right? There's a certain personality, or maybe it's almost universal human tendency that we want to hear about cons. We want to hear about lurid, titillating stories, even if they're false. But this psychologist came through with some tough truths, and he ended up really helping this bullied kid and helping his mother and helping a lot of people through helping them. So how do we build up trust in American institutions? Earned trust. Okay, if you're harassing a kid with disabilities, you're a massive jerk. Right, but also there are many layers here. The harassment that apparently prompted Quaden's outburst in the famous viral video was simply girls indicating where he came up to them on their legs or on their hips. Like, that's just what they were noticing. It seems like from the little I know about the story, it wasn't really bullying. It was perhaps fairly gentle or mild teasing that Quaden couldn't handle. So let's say you go around in a wheelchair. What about the responsibility of people with disabilities to make regular people feel at ease? Like, we talk all the time about how the world has to accommodate people with disabilities. How about putting some emphasis on the need for people with disabilities to make everyone else feel at ease? And so some people carry their disabilities like a club. They're just looking for excuses to hate people. Right? They're just looking for excuses to be suicidal or homicidal. So there's a tremendous amount that people with disabilities can do to make regular people feel at ease and comfortable. And one of the things they can do is to stop being so hypersensitive about maybe completely innocuous remarks, but that people with disabilities may interpret as just nasty, vicious bullying when at most it may be just mild teasing. Pass, unpack. Commie tactics to avoid discussion and debate, says Laponius. This is the help I cried out for and needed in my youth. Thankful for the Lucosphere as an adult. John says, I carry my autism like that. Josh says, blessings, bro. Wish I could hang with you. I got to make that paper. Have a great stream. Thanks, Josh. I wasn't going to stream on Saturday nights, but I thought, maybe Josh will come by and throw down a super chat. So without Josh's support, I probably wouldn't have been streaming on Saturday night. So Josh came through with major $70 in super chats last night. Look, if you live in the United States of America, we have no alternative but to have institutions. Or if you live in Australia, you have no alternative but to have institutions. You want to have institutions that work and that are accountable. So salvation is not going to descend to us from above. It's not going to come from some messianic figure, and it's not going to come from blowing up a building or invading Capitol Hill or messing with hedge funds by buying GameStop. Okay, our predicament is not personal. Problem is not Joe Biden. Problem's not Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. The problem is structural. So even as disruptive a figure as Donald Trump, he's a symptom of a deeper malady that can engender many more Trumps and worse. So before we can talk about restoring trust, and I'm reading here from Martin Gurri, my new favorite thinker, we must understand why it drained away in the first place. So our institutions, our government, and our politics are simply maladapted to the digital age. These institutions received their form in the 20th century, which was the heyday of the top-down, I talk, you listen model of organizing humanity. So I don't do a good show. Live streams are not good if they're just, generally speaking, they're top-down, I talk, you listen. I get a good show when I'm reading the chat, reacting to the chat, and we're having a back and forth. I make a far better show. JF Gurri makes a far better show. Richard Spencer makes a far better show. Godwood Podcast makes a far better show. Kevin Michael Grace makes a far better show when he's in dialogue and debate with other people. Like the I talk, you listen model just is not very compelling. It just does not work very well. So, had a friend get in contact with me this morning He said, when you talked about your YouTube channel, Luke is back, being deleted and then restored. When you asked about it, I had some fun conspiracy thoughts. He says, I was on the GameStop pump. I sold at $290. When I sold, right after I hit the confirmation screen, I was kicked off my account. Tried to log back in. They wouldn't let me back in after I answered the security question correctly. I tried to log in on my phone with biometric ID. Couldn't do that either. So I called the brokerage. After waiting on hold for an hour, got a nice customer support lady who told me to try logging in again, and I was in. And similar things happened to friends of mine at the same time. Reminds me of issues with Verizon. They'll increase my bill by $70 out of the blue. Then you call them to say, oh, sorry, you should still be on the old price. Let me refund you. So companies do what they want to do, and then they wait for pushback. And I think that's true for people. If you allow other people to abuse you, people will abuse you. If you sell yourself short, there are no end of people who will take advantage of you. So that's why it's essential that we learn emotional resilience and how to stand up for ourselves. So maybe for some people, some companies, some of the time, this is not so much a mistake, but a strategy. And those who don't stand up for themselves get screwed over. So my friend notes the GameStop pump was extremely annoying for brokerages because all these financial institutions are smothered in regulations about how their clearinghouses have to operate. They are not meant to deal with most of their volume being in hyper volatile assets. How gracefully an institution handles a situation like that tells you a great deal. Robinhood, the app, shattered under pressure, but more traditional online brokerages bore it fairly well. And another friend says, Luke is smearing nihilists on Twitter. Does the ADL have an anti-nihilism wing to report to? We nihilists are a vulnerable minority. Sure, it starts with a few jokes. Next, you'll want to round us up and put us into camps. I bet Luke is already submitting designs for a nihilist patch that we must wear to identify ourselves. We'll be forced to chant, I believe grouping random events into a narrative is a worthy endeavor, over and over and over. All right, here is climate czar Gina McCarthy talking about how clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels.
Be here today, and in fact, this is a chance for me to say thank you more formally. The Chevy Volt is upstairs. We'll be able to take a look at it. We got about 1,000 photos.
Yeah. Is it plugged? It's as simple as that.
The batteries are in the trunk?
No, the battery in this particular design is a T shape right down the center and across the back seat area. Because everybody thought we killed the electric vehicle. No, we didn't. It's alive and well.
So what's charging the batteries right now? What's the source of
Well,
electricity?
here, it's coming from the building.
I mean, is it, what's our mix of power?
Oh, actually, Lansing feeds the building.
What's that?
Lansing feeds power to the building. So I don't know.
They're,
I bet you they're a bit of coal. They're heavy on natural gas, aren't they?
right now the car's charging off of your grid.
Right. It would be charging off our grid, which is about 95% coal.
Okay, thanks Josh for the super chat. Here's some free shekels. I'm off to work. Josh Randall. Laponia says these climate people are so ignorant it hurts. Either that or they are liars with an agenda. Or often people lie because they want to help, right? A lot of people think that if lying accomplishes good ends, then it's okay to lie. I know a lot of rabbis who think that way, and a lot of social and political activists think that as long as the lying achieves a good ends, that is good. Yeah, the power comes from this magical electric plug right here. Okay, so our institutions are designed to be top-down. I talk, you listen. They are ponderous and they are distant from ordinary people. Their legitimacy depended on control over information. So failure and scandal could be dealt with discreetly. So let's say you have a rabbi teaching in a children's school and he starts molesting the kids. Traditionally, the thing to do was that you simply moved him away from that community to another community where he would again molest the kids. That was the same with priests. now we've got a digital tsunami that has swept away the possibility of control. So the system has lapsed into crisis. We have all these reasons now to question everything that our institutions and our elites tell us. So elite failure, elite scandal, elite shortcomings now sets the information agenda. So to restore trust, we must reconcile a networked public with a tsunami of information to the authority of democratic institutions. The crisis is structural. A reconfiguration of government is called for. There's no reason why government can't be made flatter and faster, less like an immobile pyramid, more like an internet service provider. Amazon is an immense bureaucracy, but what the public experiences is fast, reliable service. Government can match that. We see government doing that in places like Estonia and Taiwan. Political organizations and parties at present resemble Masonic lodges, but perhaps they should look more like Wikipedia or Reddit, where a churn of enthusiasm from below interacts with governance from above. So we need to reduce the distance between the public and its representatives. And what better way to reduce the distance between the public and its representatives than to throw out really big fences around Capitol Hill? So the web entails proximity. So you'll notice that all the big web companies, they have self-deprecating names. Like the only way to succeed online is to be at ease with self-deprecation. So Google does not call itself the Central Information Clearinghouse, right? It calls itself Google, right? There's a certain ethos that develops when you're online quite a bit. It's the use of irony and humor and not taking yourself too seriously, because right now I am speaking to 22 live people, and the 22 live people know far more than I do. They have far more collective wisdom than I do. Glad you're enjoying the sad music. I'm glad that this is number one, a minor waltz by the wonderful composer Esther Abrami. I'm glad to hear that my time listening to YouTube's royalty-free audio library has not gone to waste. And so we've got a lot of articles out now about the mysterious French blogger who made $520,000 in Bitcoin donation to Capitol Hill rioters, how he booked himself into a prestigious hotel and killed himself last December because he had some, very, very nasty disease that made his life an absolute agony. So this story is linked from the Drudge Report. If our elites insist on social distance as the reward for political success, the public will be justified in questioning their commitment to democratic principles. So we must embark on a long march of moral regeneration. With our votes, our money, and our attention, we must promote elites who are admirable characters. We must raise humility along with integrity to be the highest public virtues. So as long as I stay in reality that my 22 live viewers have far more information, far more wisdom, far more life experience, and far more insights than I do, then I'm going to be okay. But if I lapse into kind of a top-down, I speak, you listen attitude, I am going to get humiliated. When candidates for office or live streamers say, I'm not sure or I was wrong, then the reconquest of trust will have begun. But none of this will happen unless we demand a renewal. Ultimately is up to us. So, New York Times has an article here, how focus on Antifa distracted attention from the far-right threat. So, yeah, part of me instinctively would rather law enforcement go after Antifa than the far-right, but I really want to step away from these instinctive, emotional reactions, right? We really want law enforcement to focus on those groups that are going to be the biggest threat to our society and to law and order. So maybe the threat does come from the right, or maybe the threat comes from the left. So I would like law enforcement to pursue threats without fear or favor or without ideological bias. And I don't think that we are served by just allowing our emotions and our political instincts to dictate this. This should be a matter of law enforcement How Trump's focus on Antifa distracted attention from the far-right threat. That's the New York Times article. So it's a lot easier to get views when you rabble-rouse. So here's modest Sephardic IQ Rabbi Yaron Reuven rabble-rousing Dennis Prager unmasked.
There is somebody that's more dangerous than him. He's so dangerous. He's so dangerous, this person. I've mentioned him before, but we're going to go to town with this. We're going to elaborate on this. This person is so dangerous that he is such a chameleon that he changes colors so well that while he's speaking against the Torah, while he's speaking against Hashem in public, while he's speaking heretical things, he speaks in such a fashion that's confused the Orthodox community, mainly the modern Orthodox community, so much so that they are his biggest audience. They are his biggest audience. Whether it's Chabad or it's modern Orthodox, they are his biggest audience, even though he's speaking against them. He's speaking against the religious people. He's speaking against their belief system. He's speaking against God. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, but hold on a second. Why? He says that God doesn't exist? No, he says it exists. Wait, so what? He says that you shouldn't keep Shabbat? No, he says keep Shabbat. He says keep Shabbat. He says don't be homosexual. He says. So how is he speaking against? Because he manipulates his speech in such a way to make you believe that he's saying what you want him to say, but in reality, telling you that you should do it, but his way. You should believe in God, but his version of God. You should keep Shabbat, but his version of Reform Shabbat, where you drive on Shabbat and you do whatever you want on Shabbat. You learn Torah, but only the Torah that he wrote in his fake books. Now, unfortunately, this chameleon has caused more damage than probably anybody else that I've mentioned throughout the years. More than Sachs, more than Mirvis, his follower, more than Dweck, more than Dro, more than Manus Friedman, more than the most recent two that we spoke about. Why? He's bigger than all of them. He's so big, I didn't even know he was a heretic until I investigated the issue a little deeper. I thought he was Orthodox, just didn't wear kippah. The name? Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager, Shem V'Shaim Yirkav, is one of these people that is literally cordial, nice, educated, but is making a mockery of Judaism in public. Now, a background about Dennis Prager. You can find this online. He's a very well-known person. He has literally billions of views on his videos. Initial work started with his political interest in the Soviet Jews who were not able to emigrate. And he specifically focused on social conservatism, which in many people's perspective is in line with Torah values, or at least the closest it can be. Prager and his siblings were raised in a modern Orthodox Jewish home. He attended the yeshiva of Flatbush in Brooklyn, New York. He even befriended Joseph Telushkin. He went to Brooklyn College, graduated with a major in history, and he took courses in Columbia University. He then left academia without finishing a graduate degree, which is, as a side note, very interesting because his organization is called Prager University. So the founder of a university doesn't have a degree. It's kind of a little bit of a joke. It's an oxymoron, to say the least.
I mean,
it's like
those
saying the
lights
person
that are
head of finance just declared bankruptcy, or the person that is a head of education is uneducated. Or the person that's head of the ethical department lacks ethics. So the head of Prager University has no degree. He left graduate school, and he also left modern Orthodoxy, becoming a new version of Reform.
So I saw a tweet the other day from a woman that says, I'm never going to be able to look at my ethics professor the same way since he impregnated my married sister.
Called rationalism/reform. I'm coining those names. He calls himself a rationalist, but in reality, he's a member in reform shuls as well. One of the places that he was a member of for a long time is a reform shul, reform temple called the Stephen S. Weiss Temple. So this Prager supported Jimmy Carter in 1976 U.S. presidential elections, despite the fact that Jimmy Carter is a notorious anti-Semite. In 1983, he co-wrote a book with Telushkin called Why the Jews? The Reason for Anti-Semitism, calling it that anti-Semitism is a sinister form of flattery. Things like this make it sound like, what's so wrong with this guy? What's so wrong with this guy? In 1986, he got divorced, went into therapy for a year, eventually wrote a book in 1999 called Happiness is a Serious Problem. He argued that confining sex to heterosexual marriage desexualized religion, which was a great achievement of ancient Jewish tradition that was worth fighting to maintain. In essence, he did something that is becoming normal today, which is taking the holy Torah, the divine law of the Torah, and calling it a culture, calling it something that is a custom, something that's good, but not an obligation. Culture, by the way, just so you know,
Representative
Hebrew
Marjorie
translates
Taylor
to
Greene
Talmud.
said Saturday she spoke
You're only
with
going to
former...
find one place in the Torah that has the word tarbut. And what's tarbut? Tarbut of the Reshaim. The culture of the Reshaim. Why? Judaism is not a culture. We have cultures within the Jewish people, but Judaism is not a culture. Calling Judaism or viewing Judaism as a culture, as a custom, or the likes is heretical to the Torah. But he says, although it's a culture, although it's not necessarily an obligation from God, at least not to his understanding, it has good things in it, like confining sex to heterosexual marriage. Like he's against gay marriage. So again, what's so bad about it? Okay, so he called it a culture, or he views it as a culture, or what's so bad about this guy? Because Rabotai Karim, you'll see as we go through this, you'll see that when someone has a rotten foundation, a rotten view of the foundation of Judaism, their views that are in line with the Torah are not in line with the Torah because the Torah said so. They're only in line with the Torah because they agree with their conscience, they agree with their psyche, they agree with their perspective. That's it. And as soon as the Torah disagrees with their perspective, with their psyche, with their overall mentality, they simply just care less about it. They throw the Torah in the garbage, which is what happens with this guy. Although he says that he battles secularism on behalf of simple goodness, he supported women's legal access to abortion. He says it's immoral, but should be allowed to abort, even though Torah says abortion is murder. He says, no, but they should be allowed to do it. No problem. He supported unjustified sex between non-married consenting men and women. Wait, the Torah says that if a man and woman are intimate, and they're Jewish people, before marriage, Torah says karet. Torah says it's karet on both of them, for multiple reasons. But Dennis Prager, no. Heterosexual marriage, that's good. Gay marriage, no good. Okay, that's in line with the Torah. But by the way, abortions, that's good. It's okay. Premarital sex, promiscuity, as long as it's consensual, that's good too. Wait, so it's like saying that Jesus is good and Moses is good. You're creating a new religion. It cannot be.
So the rabbi is not terribly troubled about being factually accurate in what he's saying. Dennis Prager never says that heterosexual promiscuity is good. But this kind of low IQ rabble-rousing, like this video is called Dennis Prager Unmasked, you're going to get a lot more viewership for this kind of video compared to the thoughtful erudition of a Marc Shapiro.
Is this a historical person that we're reading stories about? Is this an archetype? Wait to the new book and you'll see. But the idea that he says that anyone's prophecy can be greater than Moshe, it's very problematic. The Rambam's seventh principle, this is his ikar, that no prophet either before Moshe or after Moshe would be greater than him. And that means, for instance, that you can't have Muhammad come and say, well, he's greater than Moshe or anything like that. There's disagreement with the Rambam. Some speak of the Mashiach as being greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the Rambam's principle. So what he says as follows is a very short note, but Adam Harishon is not included in history. He's before history. He's outside of what we regard as history. He's the shorish of everyone. And there's a passage, and it's a famous Kabbalistic idea called the Zira Ilad Adam Harishon, the special shine, as it were, of Adam Harishon. So he's sort of, I don't want to get to Kabbalistic things, Amy Asik and Mr. as the expression goes, I don't know about Kabbalistic stuff, or what I do know, I might read stuff, but I don't really know it. But there's some concept of Adam Harishon as being like encompassing all of humanity, which again, this is going to be part of the issue of, as an archetype, and what is the serpent? Is this the Satan? All these sorts of things that I'll deal with in the book. But this, I thought, it's an interesting concept that history doesn't begin. The primeval, it begins later. So when the Rambam speaks of Quaden, speaks about prophets, he's not referring to first. Okay, just a small one. The next point, though, is a big one. And that's another letter to Revolt here. And I can't remember why I wrote to Revolt. This is the last letter to Revolt here.
Okay, so the chat says, I like the lower IQ Rabbi Yaron Reuven better. He speaks my language. So it's hard to understand anyone who's more than 2 standard deviations of IQ above you. So with the Marc Shapiro, we're talking about someone with about 160 IQ. Right, so someone who's about 4 standard deviations above the norm. Someone who's 2 standard deviations above the normal level of genius, which is 145. With Rabbi Yaron Reuven, we're talking about someone with a 120 IQ. So anyone with an IQ over 90 can appreciate Rabbi Yaron Reuven, but only those with an IQ, say, north of 120 are going to be able to appreciate Marc Shapiro. So there are a lot more people with an IQ in the range of like 90 to 120 than people with an IQ between 120 and 150. Rustin says, I don't hear any difference between the two. I only hear Krusty the Clown's father, so I don't know who Krusty the Clown is. So I'll play just a little bit more so you can get the difference. This is Rabbi Yaron, Reuven, Sephardic Rabbi.
Both are good, unless your belief systems that actually agree with the Torah have nothing to do with the Torah. They have to do with just simply your own personal perspective. And this is why it was easy for him to become involved with the Stephen S. Weiss Temple, Reform Temple. In 1995, he urged conservative Jews to be open with working with conservative Christians, like the Christian Coalition, as we've talked about many times over the last year. The spiritual cancer among us, where there's Christian missionaries inside yeshivot, inside Jewish communities, inside our media, Christian missionaries that are literally actively capturing Jewish souls and destroying them. Over 500,000 Jews have converted to Christianity. One of the pillars behind all of that is Dennis Prager, because his advocacy was already...
So he's making a video saying, Dennis Prager is a horrible person. This is Dennis Prager unmasked. And that's like the easiest way to get more social status and to get views is you try to tear down those who are just above you. So the easiest way for someone on the distant right to get views is to tear down Richard Spencer, someone like that. And it's interesting that the way human status dynamics work, very similar to the warrior apes who are in this wonderful documentary, Rise of the Warrior Apes, where they're banding together to kill this monkey. And it's the higher status apes who get access to the fried bits of the monkey.
Gets out on a small branch, and he's momentarily trying to decide what to do. Another chimpanzee comes from an adjacent tree, jumps onto the other end of the bough, runs at the monkey from behind, grabs him.
We got one.
I was standing maybe 15 feet from them, watching this. 3 male chimpanzees each took an arm or a leg, and they literally started drawing and quartering this monkey.
And Yeehaw says, there's an Orthodox Jewish community next to me. I'd love to talk to them, but they rarely wave back or say hi when I'm walking my dog. So there are 2 possibilities here. One is that this community is from New York, and so they've kind of inherited the New York brusqueness. And then the other possibility is that this is a strongly identifying in-group, and so they don't tend to pay much attention to out-group. So there are Orthodox Jews who will wave back and say hi, but generally speaking, those groups with high in-group identity tend to be insular and tend not to care much about what outsiders think. So this is from Rise of the Warrior Apes.
Here's a leg, it's yours.
And Bartok, yes.
Meat seems to play an important role in the formation and maintenance of social bonds.
Right, so the higher you are in the status hierarchy among the warrior apes, you get better access to the better meat and to the better females.
They share meat, but they don't share it randomly. They tend to share it with their close associates.
It's quite selective, and one of the things that Bartok would do is he would selectively share pieces of meat with other individuals, not everybody, one of his buddies, one of his friends.
To divide a big monkey in half, and then he hangs.
And Laponius notes, is it true, Mr. Ford, that Grappelli was a little too liberal with his fingers in other apes' bums? Yeah, I was quite distressed to watch this documentary and to see the extent of homophobia among apes. And I think that they inherited this from white supremacist media, like the New York Times and ABC News, that they got these messages of homophobia from our elite media and they internalized them. So sad.
Hands half of it to Hare.
Hare would later turn around and help Bartok. Bartok plays the game according to those rules instead of the brute force game. Lofty just never seemed to be able to play the coalitionary game, the meat sharing and grooming game in the same fashion that...
Right, so you had an ape who made his way to the top of the dominance hierarchy, but he wasn't able to share. He wasn't able to make allies. And so he rose to be number one by brute force, but then other apes joined together, and a group strategy will usually outcompete an individualist strategy.
Bartok did. He wasn't as socially skillful as Bartok.
So the politics of the warrior apes.
Early 1999, when I was here for a pretty extended field season and got to witness for the first time how things changed at the top. Moya was still the alpha male, but Lofty decided to make a bid. He was ready to challenge.
The alpha male really does a lot better than the other high-ranking males. And dominance rank indeed does have a strong effect on reproductive success. Lofty, he was a physical specimen, very muscular.
He first had to beat a few other males, including Bartok, who was still number 2. There was this climactic moment. Lofty and Bartok were both in this dense vegetation where I couldn't see very well what was going on. And then Bartok emerged from this vegetation. His supreme self-confidence shattered.
So Bartok's like Dennis Prager.
After that, he was number 3. Lofty had just made himself number 2.
So Lofty's like Rabbi Yaron Reuven.
He then started a challenge of Moya that took several months.
So Moya's like Ben Shapiro.
Lofty was a bully, kind of bullied his way to the top individually, and his challenge to Moya was him against Moya. It wasn't him plus an ally.
Like Yaron Reuven, right? This is Lofty, Rabbi Yaron Reuven, taking on Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager.
He really shook Moya's confidence. And finally, Moya just started to give way to him. I can remember the first day that I saw Moya paint grunt to Lofty, and when I saw that, I thought, okay, he's done it. He's the alpha male now.
Yeah, so Rabbi Yaron Reuven of the Warrior Apes becomes the alpha male, but...
you can't lead if no one follows you.
It's like the JF Gurri of dissident right live streamers. But you can't lead if no one follows you.
He'd run around, beat up everybody, and then he'd take off. And he never seemed very secure in his position. You know, feel comfortable being around others and acting like the alpha male. He never really was able to build the kind of network of other adult males.
So, question in the chat, who's the highest IQ alt-right content creators? So I suspect it would be JF Gurri and Richard Spencer, Jared Taylor, Greg Johnson. We're talking IQs here, I think all north of 130, along with Peter Brimlow.
Bartok seemed to size up the situation. Lofty just beat Moya. I can do that.
This is from the documentary Rise of the Warrior Apes. And it's just interesting how closely the hierarchical
when
struggles
Moya
of apes
gave in to Lofty,
resembles
Bartok
our own.
started to challenge Moya. and he won. So he became number 2, and Moya became number 3.
3-2.
But Moya and Bartok stayed allies. Once he'd become number 2, pretty quickly he just decided, well, I should be the alpha male. Lofty was someone who kind of bullied his way to the top. Bartok was more of a political tactician.
He's not the biggest male. He never was among the biggest.
So I have friends who are obsessed with the idea of the Sigma personality. So apparently there's the alpha. We all know what an alpha personality is, it just dominates. And then there's the beta who gets dominated, right? So in life, the strong take what they want and the weak endure what they must. But then there's the Sigma. And the Sigma, it's not an alpha, not a beta, but a personality who observes. So a cerebral personality who observes and is able to make alliances.
But Bartok knew who to make friends with. And so he made friends with the big guys. And that worked to his advantage.
He groomed selectively with others, sort of to build these bonds with those others.
He did the same thing with Hare. He still had Moya. And he did it to some other male chimpanzees too. Lofty now had the problem that he had this other male who was building that kind of alliance network. So it was not just going to be him against Bartok. He had mostly just himself.
And it was
So Dennis Prager, in a sense, is Sigma. Dennis often says, I'd much rather be part of a group of all-stars than to be a star. Dennis has said that he's never lost a friend. So someone like Dennis Prager is fairly skilled at making alliances and getting along with people and sustaining relationships.
As a result of that, I think that had a lot to do with him having such a short reign at the top.
So the Rabbi Reuven personality tends to burn out. Has a more difficult time sustaining relationships and alliances.
Bartok and 4 males, showing that I've got Hare behind me, I've got Moya behind me. So many males jumped on Lofty and beat him up. Lofty really gets beaten by this team of other males, and after that Bartok was the alpha male.
And the chat says, why are people obsessed with alpha, beta, sigma, gamma males, always beta males themselves? Well, maybe people who have a lot of experience being beta don't enjoy that humiliation. So they're looking for ways to use their intelligence and awareness to circumvent unpleasant experiences with the dominance hierarchy. So now I think we can better understand this Rabbi Yaron Reuven
far back
video.
in 1990s, before it was as damaging as it is today. In 1999, nationally syndicated talk show on the socially and politically conservative Christian radio station KRLA in Los Angeles. Hence, we see the reason of why Dennis likes the Christians so much. Why did he tell the Jews you should work with them? Why? They are a huge market. They are a huge beneficiary, a huge supporter of all of his work. His heresy, part of it, comes from them. His lack of beliefs in the foundations of the fundamental principles of Judaism come from them. This, Rabotai, is just a scratch on the surface. How did this guy get into the modern Orthodox world? How did he get into the Chabad world? How did he get into the Orthodox world, if you will? Much of that publicity was done by a Chabad rabbi, a well-known Chabad rabbi that helped him by getting him into the community.
Bob is 100% responsible for my entire effort on the happiness issue because it was a dear friend, Rabbi Schwartzy in Los Angeles, where I live, many, many years ago. He was the Chabad rabbi at UCLA. And he said, Dennis, could you come and speak to the Jewish students here? A lot of them know you from radio, so we'll get a turnout. I said, Schwartzy, for you, anything. I assume you want me to speak on Judaism. He said, no, nobody will show up.
Presenting him as a Jew, presenting him as a Torah observant Jew. Even though he divorced his Jewish wife and married a woman with a questionable conversion, most likely a reform conversion, meaning that he's still goya. Even though he openly admits that he does not listen or agree with the sages. And he says it in his...
Okay, so his wife, his first wife, did not get a reform conversion. She got an Orthodox conversion. So he's reckless with his facts. I believe Dennis Prager's first wife was born Jewish. His second wife got an Orthodox conversion. I believe his third wife got a conservative conversion.
His lectures in modern Orthodox synagogues and universities and so on. He says he doesn't agree with a Jew having to keep Yom Tov for 2 days like the sages decreed. Doesn't agree, so he doesn't do it. He only keeps 1 day.
Reform Jews would never have me at their convention speak on why I am not liberal. But Orthodox Jews had me at their convention speak on why I'm not Orthodox, which is astonishing. I believe that the oral law, Judaism consists of written law, the Torah law, and oral law, which you'll find in the Mishnah, which is part of the Talmud. I believe that the reason it was kept oral was so that it changes.
So you don't believe those particular laws are binding?
Right, that's exactly right. I don't believe they're binding. The Torah laws I don't observe, it's because I'm lazy, not because I don't believe they should be observed. I'm a sinner, but I believe they should be observed. So it's not that I'm lazy and don't want to do an 8th day. It's that I think they're wrong. It's not comfort. It's ideological opposition. I really am somewhat of an outlier in Jewish life, not being...
So press 1 in the chat if you revere the oral law. Press 2 if you want to keep the oral law oral.
Orthodox and believing that the Torah is divine. Do I believe that God dictated the 5 books to Moshe? I have no position on how the Torah...
So Dennis Prager is a natural alpha. How do I know that? Because even when he was a kid, his father's friends would always arrive early for appointments so that they could have time to talk to Dennis Prager when he was just a kid. Each of his 12 years in school, Dennis Prager was selected as class president. Okay, that's pretty alpha.
Came about. None. It's by one of my favorite lines in the Torah. This is supposed to be your reason and understanding in the eyes of the world. But it's not taught that way. I'll give you one example where I differ with, this is an example where I differ with traditional teaching. The traditional teaching is that the word chok, statute, if you will, you won't here know that. I'm not bringing close to Newcastle here, but you all know that. And God teaches law. Mishpat is from mishpot, to judge, judgments, if you will, between man and his fellow man. Chok doesn't mean a law you can't understand. The rabbis made that up. The Torah never implies that you can't understand chok. It's completely made up in the Talmud. And I love the rabbis of the Talmud. They were giants, but they were human. The Torah is divine, the rabbis are human. It's an important thing to remember, which we don't. And I don't buy for a second that chok means a law you can't understand.
Because he doesn't agree.
Okay, and Laponius says, look, Dennis was only competing with a small subset of the population. In normal school, he would have been shoved into a locker daily. I don't think so. Dennis Prager is 6'4". He's always been a big guy. You're not going to be able to shove a guy like that into a locker. And he's not competing as a radio host with just a small subset of the population. When he hosted a show on KBC Radio in Los Angeles on Saturday and Sunday nights, he would routinely get something like a 40% share. So 40% of all radios turned on at that hour were tuned in to Dennis Prager. He's been nationally syndicated since 1999. So no, he's not just competing with a small subset. He's a natural alpha male. When Dennis Prager walks into a room, people change their language and their behavior.
I agree with him. He says, look, they debate among themselves, so I'm debating them. He put himself in the same level as Rabbi Yochanan.
So Dennis talks about we all exert a force field. So when I walk into a room, I have an effect on people. People feel much more comfortable saying questionable jokes or, inappropriate comments or confiding, secrets to a bloke like me because they know that I can never judge them. The king of splooge does not judge. The seminal blogger does not judge.
He put himself in the same level as Rabbi Akiva. Him, Dennis, the advocate of social conservatism. He's in the same level as Rabbi Akiva. He doesn't agree that we have to keep Yom Tov Sheni. He doesn't agree that we should not drive on Shabbat. So he drives on Shabbat. He drives on Shabbat. He said, no, I only drive to shul.
So Yom Tov Sheni is the extra day of the Jewish holiday. So the Torah only prescribes keeping Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, for 7 days. But the rabbis added an extra day in part to punish Jews who live in the diaspora. They don't have the extra day in Israel. and also because of some confusion about the calendar, so better to observe a little too much than too little.
Sure, I don't drive to work. I don't work on Shabbat. I never worked on Shabbat, he says. So I'm a tzaddik. Tzaddik. How does tzaddik doesn't work on Shabbat? Doesn't work on Shabbat.
Tzaddik means righteous.
Not understanding that it's not about working on Shabbat. Only an idiot thinks it's working on Shabbat.
Okay, so this is fun, entertaining, compelling, low IQ content. Now, this content here requires about at least 30 more IQ points. And this guy takes a great deal of care with his accuracy and his scholarship.
I think I wrote to him, if I recall, because he has this idea, which I don't buy at all. And it shows that the Chardalim are really quite fundamentalist, even more often than the Haredim. In fact, soon we're going to see something by Rabbi Yelei, our friend Rabbi Yelei, which is...
So Marc Shapiro was at Harvard University with Noah Feldman. So we're talking two scholars IQs in the north of 160. He did his PhD at Harvard under Isidore Tversky, the last person to get a PhD under Dr. Tversky.
Is puzzle in the eyes of Rav Aviner, and he's coming from the Haredi world. Rav Aviner, when I say fundamentalist, in the sense that to the point that he refuses to acknowledge that a Rishon, maybe even an Afron, I don't know, could be influenced by his environment to come up with ideas. I mentioned this example already because he was asked about Arbarnel's shocking idea that only men are created at Tzelem Elokim, not women. Success men, because men's job is to understand matters intellectually, and that's not the job of women, and they don't have that ability. And so someone raised the point, which appears perfectly logical to me, that he was influenced here by Christian views about women, etc. I don't see why that's a problem, but Rav Aviner won't say that. He says, no, we say we don't accept the Arbarnel, but we will never say that he was influenced by non-Jewish ideas. He came to this idea through his reading of Torah. It's Torah. We just don't accept it. And we have a different approach. I don't know why. I know for a fact for Soloveitchik, who didn't think very highly of the Arbarnel, I do think highly of him, but I know for Soloveitchik wouldn't have that opinion about the Arbarnel. Maybe about Tosfos, but not the Arbarnel. But
so he's talking here about the historic Jewish approach is that you don't really care about the context in which rabbis operated. So it was anti-historicism, that we don't account for rabbis' beliefs by the religious, social, political, cultural context in which they were operating. So he's talking here about Isaac ben Judah Abarbanel, who lived from 1437 to 1508, and he was a biblical and rabbinic commentator. He lived in Spain most of his life.
So Rav Aviner, I wanted to give an example of something to Rav Aviner, that what he would say about this. If you're going to say that everything derives from Torah sources, then what about what I'm going to throw you now? What I'm going to show you now, and I'm going to show you inside. This really fits in with what we spoke about last week as well, about the Rambam and different truths for different people. What I'm going to show you now, no rabbi would ever mention from the pulpit, and for good reason. And I don't think most rabbis, even in a Shia, would mention it because it's problematic and it raises questions. I don't have the answers to the questions. We'll try to work through the possible approaches now. But first, you need to be shocked a bit with what I'm going to show you.
Okay, so this is a much more high IQ approach, recognizing the limits of one's own knowledge, the difficulty of the issues involved. So this is a terrific book revisiting history, historicism, and its discontents in German Jewish thought by UCLA Professor David N. Myers. He talks about Heinrich Graetz. So prior to the 19th century, Judaism was not understood by Jews primarily in historical terms. Then we had the rise of historicism, which asked, looking at events in their context, looking at events in a disconnected sense, just what gave rise to them. And so then Heinrich Graetz came along. He lived 1817 to 1891. And in a famous essay he published in 1846, Graetz declared that the totality of Judaism is discernible only in its history. Judaism's complete nature, the sum of its powers, become clear only in the light of history. So prior to 19th century and the rise of historicism among, first of all, German scholars, history was judged by Judaism's beliefs. All right. So when Rabbi David Wolpe, a conservative rabbi, gave a sermon in 2001 about how pretty much all those who've studied the evidence have concluded that the exodus from Egypt did not occur as the Bible describes it, the way that Orthodox rabbis responded to that is one particular Orthodox rabbi at the synagogue I was attending at the time said, I want you to pull out your Siddur, your Jewish prayer book, and we're going to go to the 13 central principles of the Jewish faith according to Maimonides. And one of them was that the Torah is eternal, it can never be superseded, and therefore it's always true. So that's how he dealt with modern archaeological scholarship, is to just make this faith statement. But after the rise of historicism, instead of history being judged by Judaism's beliefs, now Judaism becomes judged by history. And so non-Orthodox forms of Judaism make the point that we have to understand every development in Judaism according to its historical time and place, rather than as with reference to, God decreed this
and
in a timeless way.
And then we're going to hear a very interesting explanation from Rabbi Leib. Let me get it handy. He even wrote it up in a, I don't know if you can see it here, he wrote it up in Hebrew. In Hebrew, when he publishes his Chidushim on, he's already published a number of Sfarim, but when he publishes his Chidushim on Torah, he can perhaps include it in there. Look, I'm honored already that the Machaber Sefer Sfarim of such a really valuable works is listening to us. But let me pull you up something. You're going to look at it, and then I'll read you my question for Rabbi Avner. Okay, this is the tour. Actually, I don't want you to see this yet, because let me just tell you something about the tour. We have Yaakov ben Asher, is an important medieval authority, the son of the great Rush. His father comes from Germany, he comes to Spain, the Arbarnel. So that's where, by the order of the Shulchan Aruch comes from, Or Chaim, Choshen Mishpat, Yeridea, and Even Ezer. It comes out of the Torah. He also wrote commentary on Chumash. We're familiar with it because if you read the Mikros Gedolos, you have the Balaturim. Balaturim is great. You get the Gematrias and all sorts of interesting stuff he points out to you, like Remez. Torah has this 4 parts to Torah. You have Pshat, you have the Drash, you have the Remez, and the Sod. Many people assume for a long time that this is it, that the great Balaturim, who wrote such important halachic works, that he spent all his time with Gematria.
So what he was just referring to there are the 4 basic ways of understanding text. Pshat is the plain meaning. I think Sod is the mystical meaning, and I've forgotten the exact meanings.
And things when he wrote Chumash, but that's just what happened is when he wrote a long commentary, and the printers, however, they just pulled out those what he called, these are like the spices, and so that's what everyone knows about the gematrias, and not just gematrias, the first letter and the last letter of words. He finds all the remnants.
So all Hebrew letters have a numeral, a number assigned with them, and so gematria is the study of the significance of the numbers of Hebrew words.
He also wrote a Perush on Torah. And it was published in the 19th century.
And Perush means a commentary.
And recently reprinted in a nice good edition. They call it the Perush Torah Aruch. So it's a regular commentary, just like all the other great Rishonim. He wrote a commentary on Chumash.
So the Rishonim, that's referring to rabbis between the 11th and the 15th century. So the era before the writing of the Shulchan Aruch, which was a compendium of Jewish law, which was published in 1563. The
I want to read you something here. I'll show you something. This is in the story with Leah, and we all know the story that Yaakov married Leah. Let me first show you the pasuk he's commenting on. Let's see. Okay, Lamed. Sorry, Lamed. Is this where the page I need? Oh, no, Chaftis. Okay, so it says that, you know the story, how he was supposed to marry Rachel, and he said he married Leah. Now, in Pasuk Lamed Aleph, it says that God saw that Leah was hated, and he opened up her womb. And then look in verse 32. It says, Leah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Reuven. What did she say? Ki ra'ah Hashem b'ani. God has looked upon my affliction. And then, and now,
so Hebrew goes from right to left. You read Hebrew from right to left. You read English from left to right.
In the next pasuk, it says that she conceived.
Pasuk means verse.
Again, and she had a son. And what does it say? Kishama Hashem, God has heard. Kisnua anochi, because I'm hated. So he's therefore giving me another son. So let's look at what the Torah says here. God has seen my affliction. It says, Reuven Amar. Regarding Reuven, it says he saw, and with Shimon he heard. God heard her affliction. With Shimon, Reuven, he saw. Why? At the beginning, Kodim Shanola Reuven. Before Reuven was born, Hayamakaba, Yaakov would beat her. Umishanola Nimnamakosa. And once Reuven was born, Yaakov stopped hitting her. And that's why Dalkain Amra Kira. That's it's when he was hitting her. That's what it means. God saw this and therefore gave her the child Reuven, and he stopped. But he still would he still would speak badly to her, rebuke her, etc. And when Shimon was born, Nimna Gami said, he stopped this. And that's why it says that by Shimon that God heard, because he wasn't beating her anymore. He was only saying bad things to her. So it says God heard her affliction. Before, if you remember, it says God saw my affliction. And now it says God heard that I'm hated. He heard because he heard Yaakov, he's saying all these terrible things to me. And But he still wouldn't have relations with her until she had leave. Okay, so how can you say, I don't mean to be disrespectful about Yaakov Menashe, how can you say this about Yaakov Avinu? That he would
Yaakov means
wife,
Jacob.
I actually, contrary to Rabbi Yehuda, I like his pshat, which I'll read you in a minute, but
pshat means the plain meaning.
I can't imagine a Rishon making this up. To me, it has to be and people were troubled by this because the first printing of the Torah, this was left out. If you read
so he's talking here about a famous rabbi talking about Jacob in the Bible used to beat his wife because she ticked him off. And like, how can you say that about Jacob, our ancestor Jacob, our patriarch?
In my book, you get the details. They didn't include this because in the 19th century, this is too shocking, but it's in all the manuscripts. And now it's in the new editions. I think this has to be some of the Russian text. No one would come up with this on their own. It's interesting that a similar type of passage from the Rush is found in the standard voluntary commentary. The pasuk says, let me show you the pasuk. A little different, actually. This goes the other direction. Who's doing the hitting? But look in pasuk. This is part Gimel, pasuk Yud Beis. That says, the man said, "The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat." In Hebrew, it's he nasonal li min ha'etz. It doesn't say she gave me of the fruit of the tree. She gave me of the tree. So the Baal Turim says here that Chava took a branch of the tree and kept hitting me with it until I agreed to eat the fruit. Okay. This, by the way, though, is not unique to the Baal Turim. It's found in...
Okay, so you got a rabbinic commentator saying that the only reason that Adam ate from the fruit of the tree of good and evil is that his wife, Eve, took a tree branch and repeatedly beat him with the branch until he agreed to eat from the fruit. Okay, let's move on back to the wonderful and wacky world of politics. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican congresswoman fond of many conspiracy theories, touts Trump call amid growing backlash. She says she spoke with former President Trump as she faces growing bipartisan criticism over past social media posts in which she expressed support for violence against Democrats. The call from Trump comes as a growing chorus of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle rebuke Greene after internet sleuths and journalists uncovered a trove of social media remarks showing the Georgia Republican indicating support for comments that advocated for the death of top Democrats. Among the social media posts that have come under scrutiny are a 2018 message in which Greene said the stage is being set in response to a post calling for the assassinations of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former President Barack Obama. Greene in January 2019 liked a Facebook comment that stated a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove Speaker Nancy Pelosi from office. Greene has drawn scrutiny for past remarks about Muslims and Jews and for supporting the QAnon conspiracy theory, which posits that Democrats are part of a satanic sex trafficking ring. So Democrats and outside groups have called on the GOP leadership to expel this woman from her committee assignments and to possibly even expel her from Congress. So what the heck is going on when people believe seemingly bizarre things like the QAnon conspiracy theory, like the idea that Jewish lasers from space caused California wildfires? Like, how could seemingly normal, rational people believe this stuff? Why do people love to believe titillating conspiracy theories and rumors? So for that, we need to understand Hugo Mercier's excellent book, Not Born Yesterday. Right, this is just a great book. Not Born Yesterday by Hugo Mercier. He is a French neuroscientist. His book was published by Princeton. Not Born Yesterday, The Science of Who We Trust and What We Believe. So what does it really mean when someone believes in something as wacky sounding as the QAnon conspiracy theory? So 2015, 20% of Americans believe that Barack Obama had been born abroad. 43% of Republicans thought he was a Muslim. In April 2017, David Dow was forcibly removed from an overbooked United Airlines plane. The situation was handled so poorly he lost a tooth, broke his nose, and got a concussion. After Dow and the airline settled, rumors flew around the popular Chinese social media platform Weibo. The settlement reached the sum of $140 million. The real amount was never divulged, but the likelihood that it was at least 100 times lower than that. In early 1969, there appeared in the French provincial town of Orleans a rumor that young women were being abducted from the changing rooms of Jewish retailers to be sent abroad as prostitutes. In spite of official rebuttals from the police, politicians, and other authority figures, the rumor grew for several months before slowly dying over the summer. Besides these examples of wildly inaccurate rumors, the low level of accuracy of some rumors is borne out by systematic studies. So, why are false rumors so common? So much of academic theorizing is focused on the state of mind of those who believe and spread these false rumors. But rumor generation and transmission results from an optimal combination of personal anxiety, general uncertainty, credulity, and outcome-relevant involvement. So changing environments such as a black president in the White House, uncertainty about the outcome of a strike, that these all generate anxiety, and anxiety supposedly makes people credulous towards information related to certain events. Rumors help people make sense of what's happening and reduce uncertainty about the future and assuage their anxiety. So anxious situations supposedly make people more gullible, and people are supposed to suffer from a lack of critical thinking, critical sense. This makes them good transmitters of rumors, no matter how ludicrous these rumors might be. But these explanations do not fit with the understanding that we did not evolve to be gullible, right? If we evolved to be gullible, we wouldn't be here. So uncertainty should make us yearn for certainty. Anxiety should make us clamor for reassurance. And being lulled into a false sense of certainty or security might feel nice, but it's a recipe for disaster. It's unlikely that we would evolve to wish for false senses of certainty and security. So why do people look for titillating rumors? Why do people feel safer believing that local shopkeepers are kidnapping young girls and selling them into prostitution? Why do we love exaggerated claims of disaster, right? This show operates on the border. This show operates on the fringe. Other shows like this operate on the fringe, and shows that operate on the fringe, on the border, they have a certain quality, and that is we get our audience by telling you that disaster is just around the corner. Right? That's how you build up a big audience, is that you tell people that that we're about to have a civil war, that our elites are evil, and that they want us dead. This is discussed in The Revolt of the Public, The Crisis of Authority in the New Millennium by Martin Gurri, his 2004 book. So shows on the margins like this instinctively oppose the center, instinctively oppose elites, institutions. Shows on the margins like this tend to be primarily about what they are against. They tend to take little interest in actually governing and what it would mean to develop the capacity to exercise power. So dissident shows primarily tend to be about negation, and they're always tend to offer you that there's threatening evil on a cosmic scale that's, just about to overtake us, that the future is doomed, and it's a weird combination of faith in human perfectibility with the calm certainty that annihilation is just around the corner. That's how dissident shows, dissident communities works, and they tend to resolve their disputes by splintering. So their numbers tend to remain small until they can all come together to hate some institution or elite, or to hate something. So dissidents tend to be united by what they hate. They tend to be much weaker and much more divided on what they want to build. So for many years, the Wall Street Journal has published a daily column, Heard on the Street, which records gossip and rumors flying around the world of finance. So an analysis of this column found that half the rumors were accurate. So this makes the column a valuable source of information. Looking at workplace rumors, the accuracy, according to one study, is generally above 80% and often 100%. Rumors about who would be laid off at a large company undergoing a radical downsizing are often totally accurate in advance of formal announcements. rumors in the armed forces about who's going to be deployed where and when, who's going to be repatriated, these rumors also turn out to be uncannily correct. Every major operation, every change of station, every important administrative change was accurately reported by rumor before any official announcement had been made. So rumors tend to be quite accurate when their content has significant consequences for the people among whom they circulate. So open vigilance is costly, right? It drains us. We only exercise it to the extent that it serves us. So in domains that matter to us, we keep careful track of who says what and when they and what they say, whether that turns out to be correct or not. So this motivates us to exercise great caution when reporting rumors so as to not jeopardize our own credibility. When we find out that rumors are true or not, we track who says them so that we can create a network of reliable informants. But what happens when the rumors don't really have any immediate relevance for your life, such as QAnon or Jewish space lasers caused California's wildfires? Okay, then there is no downside, no immediate dramatic downside to believing false rumors. What is shocking when it comes to false rumors is that people accept them on the basis of such flimsy evidence. But do people really believe these rumors, such as QAnon? Believing something, a rumor, or anything else is not an all or nothing matter. Believing depends on what you do with a given piece of information. If you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, that then has no necessary consequence. It doesn't necessarily shape your politics, your behavior, your cultural, social, political views. It's a belief, and it can remain essentially inert. It can be completely insulated from cognitive or behavioral consequences. There are no inferences or actions that immediately follow from believing that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. So you can call these beliefs reflective as opposed to intuitive beliefs from which we draw inferences and we use in making decisions. So if you believe there's a book, in front of you, when you're reading from it, you can grasp the book, you know how to use it to cover your face from the sun, you can lend it to a friend. But the belief that most stars you see at night are larger than the sun, you can be persuaded that it's true, but there's not much you can do with that belief. So reflective beliefs are beliefs that have few or no personal consequences. Therefore, we should not expect people to exercise much vigilance with regard to such beliefs. Why bother if the belief does not make much of a difference? So most false rumors such as QAnon and Jewish space lasers and that shadowy satanic pedophile elites are manipulating the stock market, it doesn't make much of a difference for how we live our lives. So therefore, it would make little sense for us to expend a great deal of vigilance evaluating them. So most false rumors are only believed reflectively. They would have much more serious consequences if they were held intuitively. So Chinese citizens are not going to exercise a great deal of vigilance to challenge rumors about how insurance settlements are handled in the United States. A Pakistani shopkeeper might say the Israelis orchestrated 9/11, but that's going to have no consequence for how he lives his life. So American truthers who believe that 9/11 was an inside job, they do not act as if they intuitively believe in the conspiracy. One of the great ironies of the truther movement is that its activists typically hold their meetings in large, unsecured locations such as college auditoriums, even as they insist that government agents will stop at nothing to protect their conspiracy for world domination from discovery.
All three seasons that have been released so far. I have no.
This is Russell Roberts, my former UCLA economics professor, and one of the people who influenced me to convert to Orthodox Judaism. Russell Roberts grew up in a secular Jewish home, became an Orthodox Jew in his 20s. So I took 2 microeconomics classes from him at UCLA in 1988, 89. And this is him interviewing Martin Gurri.
No interest in the British royalty, and yet I have enjoyed it immensely for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, it's beautifully done, and the dialogue's superb, and the acting's tremendous, and the production values are off the chart. I mean, it's an unbelievable achievement. But I think one of the reasons, there's two reasons it goes beyond gossip, although it may struggle in the next set of seasons to do that. But the one reason it goes beyond gossip is that, first, it's about the diminishing of Britain's power in the world and the fact that the Crown has to confront that alongside the secular, the politicians. But the other part of the show you've really hit on, which I think is quite important, which is the Crown's a responsibility. It's not it's a privilege and a responsibility. It's not a prize. It's not like, oh, I wish I could be that person. It comes with tremendous restrictions of duty and responsibility, and those require trade-offs that not everybody is comfortable making, and people have left the royalty in different ways, tried to. We know about that.
Memorial, along the reflecting pool, it's like almost extensions of Joe Biden's arms embracing America. It was a moment where the new president came to town and sort of convened the country in this moment of remembrance, outstretching his arms.
Watching the media, I understand how it could turn you into a Trumper. I could understand how it could make you start thinking, well, these guys are all in charge. You got the guys in charge, and then you've got the media all saying the exact same thing. I mean, the people, the press, the media during this inaugural was North Korean in its supplicacy to join. They might as well have fucking had people come out in a giant a coordinated dance move and like spell out corn pop on the National Mall. They talked about how Biden is a good and just and kind-hearted man who's going to bring back unity and respect and every good thing. He is a harbinger for its return. And when things are just as bad as they were before he became president, and the media is still talking like that on behalf of one party, how do you not think that the whole thing is fucking rigged, and that therefore the only person who is not on the side of this evil status quo is Trump, because he's the only one who has been pronounced anathema.
This is Matt Christman from
None of the Republican Party is going to be brought back into the fold. Mitch McConnell and Roy Blunt were out there yucking it up with everybody. And the irony, and the funny thing about this, it's really ingenious how this works. So I really do think that everybody in the media, everybody who's on there for all those networks talking about how Biden is light itself and he's going to bring back civilization and he's going to banish the demons and how our long national nightmare is over, they think they're helping. They think that the Trump movement and the Capitol storming is a sign of a fundamental undermining of necessary, crucial American institutions of government and media. And that by going all in for Biden, they're helping. They're like it's C-Lab 2021. I'm helping you. But they're just pouring fucking sand on it. They're pouring salt on everybody. Because having everybody talk like that, having this universal fucking hosannas for this guy, when you have to know things are still going to suck. It's all just that you're feeling better because the images are more pleasing to you than the images of the Trump years, but the fundamentals will be the same. By doing that, you are ensuring that anybody who is just watching this and is not invested in the symbology that you are is going to take away from it that you're all in this you're all in on this together, and that Trump is the only one who stands against you. Although maybe not Trump. Honestly, Trump might have fucked this thing. Who knows? We'll see. But man, he really did just shit all over everybody, didn't he? He just went out there and said, "Have a nice life. Goodbye." Oh, and I'm going to pardon all of the most corrupt political scumbags on earth, literally swamp denizens, and no Assange, no Snowden, no Manning, no fucking reality winner, nobody who threatened the state apparatus. Celebrities and fellow celebrities and fellow politicians, people who he could identify with personally, because that's all he ever could do, because he's a fucking psycho. And yes, you were a chump forever believing in him, but I think a lot of people, we'll see, are coming to the conclusion that, oh, this was full of shit. But the challenge of there being any coherent post-Trumpism is how you fill the void of Trump. And I don't think you do. I think it's going to be a splintering. I think you're going to see a wilderness period here. But what's going to keep the Republicans in play and likely get them back the House, even with there being a pretty much open civil war now within the party. I mean, Liz Cheney has already had some local Yahoo announce that they're challenging her for the House next year. Anybody who spoke against Trump in the last 2 weeks will get a fucking high-profile primary challenger. How that boils down, though, I don't know. I'm not doing predictions. But man, it was really nauseating watching the news. Just people manufacturing a reality right in front of you. You're watching something that by any objective standard is a hair-raising nightmare. Just think about this strip of the ornament. On the National Mall, surrounded by 25,000 National Guardsmen and 12-foot-tall steel barriers, they led this fucking nearly 80-year-old senile man out to bump into things, swear allegiance to the flag, get his fucking drool wiped away, and then read a fucking speech off of a teleprompter. And while everyone's wearing masks, and there's no actual crowd because of a rampaging pandemic that's killing thousands of people a day. That's the reality of that fucking inauguration. But what we were told we were seeing is some triumph of American democracy and the return of values and sanity and compassionate leadership. And everyone doing that thinks that they're shoring things up. But what they're really doing is undermining it even faster by ensuring to anybody watching that, yes, this is exactly as rigged as it looks like. This is exactly as anti-democratic as it appears to be.
This whole notion that the black family has always been disintegrating, that is nonsense. These studies go up to 1925. The great bulk of black families were intact, two-parent families up to 1925, and going all the way back through the era of slavery. So it is now only within our own time that we suddenly see this inevitable tragedy, which the welfare system says it's going to rush in to solve.
It's been 40 years since the show aired, and Thomas...
Okay, here's Andy. No,
this whole notion that the black family has always been disintegrating, that is nonsense. These studies go up to 1925. The great bulk of black families were intact, two-parent families up to 1925, and going all the way back through the era of slavery. So it is now only within our own time that we suddenly see this inevitable tragedy, which the welfare...
Okay, here's Andy.
Movements, Antifa and BLM use the cloak of racial justice and social justice to shield themselves from criticism. So, for example, I have spoken vocally in opposition to Antifa, led to me being beaten in 2019 and my family threatened and myself continually subject to death threats. And their response is, how could you be against a movement that calls itself anti-fascist? That if you're against anti-fascism, it means you're a fascist. If you're against Black Lives Matter, that means you are against black people. So, you know, that this is what makes these movements so clever, is the very, the branding of it in the slogans and all that allow a certain amount of deflection of criticism. And unfortunately, they've used that very well in that, and the media has not really applied a critical lens on the violent extremist rhetoric, the violent extremist ideology, and their violent extremist actions. So they've been given a free pass, essentially. So there are a lot of people on the left, I would say liberals, who obviously when they hear something like being against fascism, being against anti-black racism, being against racist police brutality, like these are things they want to be a part of, and they go out to these demonstrations and essentially are used as human shields in these larger protests that at a moment's instance turn into violent riots. And that's what happened, that I witnessed myself in Portland, but other cities, the riots that happened particularly at the end of May after the death of George Floyd was ostensibly under this banner of Black Lives Matter and racial justice. But there was really no way for these protests to not be hijacked by violent extremists who did it over and over and over. And in the case of Portland, over 120 days of daily riots every day.
My biggest concern is that when the small investors sees this sort of craziness going on in GameStop and other stocks like this, that they're going to sit out. And that's a problem because we have a pretty big retirement crisis in this country. People aren't investing and they're not investing enough. And when we see this sort of volatility in stocks where the fundamentals are horrific, and that's what we're talking about with respect to GameStop, that it causes investors to say, you know what, I'm not going to dip my toe in the water and do what we know they have to do, which is invest so we don't have this retirement crisis.
Elon Musk on Twitter, let's put it up on the screen for you. He says you can't sell houses you don't own. You can't sell cars you don't own, but you can sell stock you don't own. This is BS. Shorting is a scam, legal only for vestigial reasons. Does he have a point, Andrew?
No, he doesn't. There's a very good reason why investors should be allowed to short stocks. There's a reason for it. But in the same sense, hedge funds have been abusing shorting of stocks for a very long time. And if you think about the carnage caused by these hedge funds, I think that's why so many people are so happy that these small investors are doing what they're doing. The Gilded Age robber barons have been crushed, right? And they've been crushed by the small investor who traditionally has been the gum on the bottom of the shoe for Wall Street. So shorting is okay, but when you're talking about manipulation of stocks related to shorting, that's where we get into problems.
We're nearly out of time, Andrew, but what's your advice to a little guy who may be watching thinking, I'm going to jump into it this week?
Don't do it. Just say no. Like Nancy Reagan would say, stay out and let this craziness pass.
Andrew Stoltman, we thank you for your time and your analysis. Have a great week, sir.
Anytime. Thank you.
Teachers in Chicago now in a standoff with city officials over when and how to reopen the city schools, what they're demanding. That's up next.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. All right, what other goodies do I have for you? All right, let's get something here from Vaush.
There is a crisis afflicting BreadTube. Well, there are multiple crises. Of course, I've been complaining about BreadTube for ages, but there is a serious problem. One which has been present for a long time, and one which is only growing worse with time. BreadTube has a representation problem. Now, I'm not talking about racial representation. As far as I understand, there is a perfectly equal number of black and brown people and Asian people to white people, and that nobody has ever complained about a lack of racial diversity in BreadTube. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. I am, of course, talking about the lack of men. For those of you who have been paying attention to social media, or even the trending Twitter feed, because this has gone trending, PhilosophyTube, aka Abigail Thorne, has publicly announced her transition, which is, well, fantastic, obviously. Some people might overlook the representation problem we're having right now and say that Abigail looks radiant and that they are delighted to see that she is finally living her truth. Some people, ignorant to the plight of men, might say that it's spectacular that she's found a way to reconcile long-standing concerns about her identity and that this is overall a phenomenal thing for the community and that they wish Abigail the best of luck. Some people might say that, of course, some people. But they overlook a critical problem. We are running out of men. You see, Abigail has gone as Abigail for a while. And this is in her own words, as Abigail has said, the past year or so of PhilosophyTube content has had her playing a character. This is exactly like what happened with Rachel Dolezal. Exactly the same thing. In a community deeply lacking in representation, it's almost as though we're being mocked. I mean, how many male breadtubers are there anyway? Well, there's me, and we have H-Bomb, we have Harris, and we have Sean, and we have Big Joel, and we have Bo of the Fifth Column, and we have Three Arrows, and well, Hassan's not quite a breadtuber, of course, but Hassan's definitely prominent left-leaning space. You know, we got Jack Saint, absolutely, we do. It's barely any. You know, it's nothing. You know, yeah, we got the Surfs, we got Cody, we got, well, we're stretching the definition of breadtube people. Kyle Kalinske, you know, we got so few. You know. Oh, Jacob Geller, that's right, Jacob Geller, true. TJ Kirk does make fairly progressive content, you know. So, of course, we have Xander Hall, though Xander Hall, as contentious as I am, often gets precluded from the breadtube discussions, you know, of course. Oh, yeah, Jimmy Dore, of course, Jimmy Dore, known male breadtube. Folks, we're running out. We are a dying species, you know. I did not expect that the femification rays emanating, the 5G rays coming out of DC after Biden's inauguration would be hitting so hard and so strong, but we're a dying breed. Soon, there will be no men anywhere, not just in breadtube, but anywhere in the world. And to that extent, the preservation of men is akin to the preservation of the Siberian tiger, a desperate act of resistance against a cruel encroachment of extinction. Some of you are celebrating. You know why you're celebrating? Because they've already gotten to you. Do I have a single man watching right now? No, not one. No. Guys, I feel like I'm the radio man in the bunker. I feel like I'm the last one here. I'm broadcasting the signal in the midst of a post-apocalypse. Everyone, the outside is just marauding hordes of women and enemies marching around. One day I too will succumb. One day I too will lose. You know, I just thought.
Another thing that's consistent with them, like we mentioned Russiagate and them falling into all these other mainstream narratives like the OPCW report and censorship. But another thing is that they think that we can accomplish things just by with incrementalism, which is why they kept bullying people into supporting Joe Biden. And then if you don't, then you're helping Trump, you're helping fascists, not realizing that Joe Biden is himself a fascist. I mean, he's the author of the 94 crime bill. He was an architect for militarizing the police under the Obama administration. There's never been a war he didn't like. When in history has incrementalism ever worked, right? Has there ever been a case in history?
Well, look, I mean, there are some folks who felt that Biden was the better candidate in the election.
Right, yeah, I understand that part, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I was not convinced. I was open to it. If someone could convince me of that, I would hear it. And I understood the concerns. I did not vote for Trump. I mean, what Trump said about immigrants abhors me. His economic handling of the pandemic has been a nightmare. But at the same time, I was not convinced Biden was better. I mean, there were a lot of things about Biden. I mean, and we'll see. I mean, now Biden says he's going to turn things around with the pandemic. Let's see it happen. Right now, I'm a little bit worried about this vaccine situation, but he's only been in office for a week, so let's see. I'm open to the possibility Biden might be better. But at the end of the day, the notion that voting for Biden is going to get us anywhere closer to socialism is ridiculous. Okay, I mean, Biden represents just another wing of the rich and powerful, and a lot of the rhetoric from Biden supporters about Trump was not coming from a good place. Their rhetoric seemed to be, Trump is bad because he's hurting the ability of the United States to dominate the world with NATO. Trump is bad because he's stirring up, average people. And Donald Trump, Donald Trump shows we need to censor the internet more. Stuff like that makes me think that a lot of the Biden criticisms of Trump are not the same as average working people's criticisms of Trump. And Kamala Harris, I wrote a whole book about how scary she is. Joe Biden has a pretty horrendous record on all kinds of issues, both domestic and internationally. What I don't understand is why doesn't the cancel culture apply? We're supposed to cancel Jimmy Dore because he talked to some anarchist kid, anarcho-libertarian kid, whatever. Joe Biden voted for the Iraq War that killed millions of people. Right? Kamala Harris tried to execute a man who was innocent and block DNA evidence that would have gotten him, free. Kamala Harris tried to kill somebody, right? That's attempted murder in my book, right? I mean, if you had evidence that could acquit somebody and you try to prevent it from being put forward because they'll get the death penalty, that's attempted murder, right? Telling us there's weapons of mass destruction when there weren't any and justifying a war that then kills millions of people, that's pretty murderous in my book. So I don't understand, why are you not canceled for associating with Biden or canceled for associating with Kamala Harris, but we're supposed to cancel Jimmy Dore for talking to some kid? Some kid with funny right-wing ideas. I don't get it. But I do get it, actually. They're foot soldiers of the same wing of the ruling class that Biden's a foot soldier for at the end of the day. And that's why a lot of this anti-fascism is cheap. It's very, very cheap. Look, fascism itself is a mass movement of violence and terror. And when fascism is coming, at that point, the only response at that point is self-defense, and that's a very serious situation. But fascism tends to come after a failed revolution. Fascism is like the last resort of the ruling class when there's a danger of socialist revolution on the horizon. There is no danger of socialist revolution in the United States
guy's
right
an
now,
idiot.
right? The socialist movement is so confused and doesn't know what it stands for. Germany had a revolution in 1918 that failed, and
every time someone sends me a Caleb Maupin link, he's ranting about fascism and he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about.
Communists were still massive, and then fascism came. Spain, they had a mass revolution that overthrew the monarchy, and the communists were in a coalition government, and so fascism crushed the coalition government. Italy, after World War I, had a massive revolution that failed, and Mussolini came in there. The ruling class of the United States doesn't really need fascism right now. I can tell you that much. They might want a more authoritarian state, but Biden probably wants that too.
Sending me
right?
Caleb
I don't think Biden's opposed to that. He wants the internet more.
He's an idiot. Okay, there's something more healthy.
Nothing like a stadium, walking out onto the playing arena, people cheering for your team, cheering your teammates for the excellence that they produce. The moment you get told that you can't play rugby anymore, it's like the light goes out. It's all gone. You're a former player. The spotlight that shines so brightly and sometimes can be blinding gets turned off and you effectively feel like you're in the dark.
Daniel Joseph Vickerman was born in South Africa. He moved to Australia at the turn of the millennium.
Goes to Vickerman, the money man.
Dan's style of play was exactly what you wanted. It's what I loved. It was confrontational. It was in your face. He was a physical, aggressive, no holds barred player.
So this is from Australia's public broadcaster, ABC News, the Australian Broadcasting Company, talking about the sport of rugby here. So the cliche is that soccer is a gentleman's sport played by ruffians, and that rugby is a ruffian sport played by a gentleman.
You always knew from a coaching point of view that with Dan in the team, you were not going to have to question physicality. It just came with Dan.
Dan Vickerman, he takes it with two hands.
On the rugby field, he used his enormous height and heft to devastating effect.
Now it's Vickerman, up over halfway. Good meters here by the Wallabies.
I'm sure there's international rugby players that would have been shuddering around the grounds knowing that Vix was coming to clean them out.
What a tackle from Ian Goff.
Vickerman used to be 6'8", he's now 3'4".
After 10 years playing at the peak of his sport, rugby union, Vickerman retired from the Wallabies duty.
Okay, so anytime that you base your life around one thing that can be taken away, you're vulnerable. And what kind of people, generally speaking, base their life around one thing, such as becoming a Hollywood star or a sporting star? People who, generally speaking, are failing at life. And so they put all their eggs in one basket. So for a couple of years there, I wanted to be this world champion marathon runner. And so I finished 5 marathons when I was 11 years of age. But I started to get knee problems by 8th grade, and I had to quit running. So that threw me into an existential crisis. And then I decided, I'm going to put all my eggs in the journalism basket. I'm going to become a great journalist. not going to have to be concerned about how I do in school, because success in journalism does not depend upon your grades. It does not depend upon your education. And then in my late teens, I was working at a radio station. I became frustrated with how superficial news was. There's no necessary connection between news and truth. The journalism cliche relies upon this idea that we're giving people the truth and that we're helping people become responsible citizens in a democracy. That's also false. And there's also this notion that, journalists know better, that they are in a position to tell you, what information you should understand. So I started to see through some of these delusions of the journalist mindset. So I decided, I'm going to become a professor. So I start studying really hard. I finally start getting straight A's in college. I get accepted to UCLA. Then I get sick. And I'm basically bedridden for about 6 years. So I have to kind of build my life up again after all the things that I was going to base my life on. They just crumbled.
The injury. He studied at Cambridge University and built a career in finance. In short, he seemed like the ultimate success story for life after sport.
He was just a big, beautiful guy. He sadly never saw himself the way others did.
In February this year, 5 years after his retirement and struggling with mental illness, Daniel Vickerman took his own life.
There was no obvious indicators that what was going to happen. The Saturday that it happened, it was a really normal day. Been to basketball with his little boy in the morning.
So you would think that CTE would probably play a role here, some kind of brain injury from playing rugby. That would make sense. In addition to, if you put all your eggs in the basket of being a star, whether it's a sporting star or a theater star or a political star, you're not going to be particularly resilient in dealing with life. So earlier I played highlights from a psychologist talking about developing emotional resilience. Well, putting all your eggs in one basket is the opposite of emotional resilience.
Went to the beach that afternoon, and had a family dinner that night where they went out and everything was, there was nothing untoward.
May he rest in peace.
Vickerman's death shocked the sporting world.
It was just disbelief, just utter disbelief.
Right, so this is why it's so important to develop emotional resilience and to learn how to handle pressure.
I have a really hard time opening up, period, but opening up to someone I've never spoken to before. Well, once, but that's even harder.
Yeah, so there's like a vulnerability thing.
Absolutely.
Do you find it hard to make yourself vulnerable right now as we're talking about this?
Yeah, kind of. And then it's frustrating, and I get mad about it because I feel like this is a really cool opportunity.
It makes sense to me that you would have a hard time making yourself vulnerable right now. Even the way that you just treated yourself, it was like you're having a hard time making yourself vulnerable because there's other people listening on the call, because you've never talked to me before. Look at the way you respond to that. You say, what's wrong with you? You're wasting an opportunity. Instead of, being understanding and forgiving the fact that your guard is up right now.
I don't want it to be.
I know, but it is. That's okay. It's hard for you to make yourself vulnerable right now. So look at the way you come at yourself. You say, what's wrong with you? This is an opportunity. You're wasting it. That's not treating yourself with unconditional love. Taking a stance of, hey, listen, it makes sense that it would be hard for you to put your guard down right now, given the circumstances. And that's okay. And you're okay. Do you hear the difference in those two takes?
Yeah.
Does it sound like it would be nice if you were treated like that throughout the day?
I wouldn't ever get anything done.
What do you mean?
Well, I kind of feel like cracking the whip is how you get stuff done,
When a good mate of yours, you find out they've passed away, you almost feel a little bit of guilt about, was I a good enough mate? Did I ask the right questions? And, you obviously straight away think, no, you didn't.
So mateship is something I miss about Australia. There's a natural sense of male camaraderie, which is a little more challenging to find in America because there's almost nothing that unites Americans. While most Australians speak with the same accent, they have a similar view on life, they have similar names. It's a lot easier to find your mates and to develop mateship in a country like Australia or even England than a more diverse country like the United States. So in Australia, the male motto is bros before hoes.
Daniel Vickerman left behind a wife and 2 young boys.
I stand before you today on behalf of 2 families in grief, and given Dan's significant achievements, I think it's safe to say as well, an entire world that is in shock.
Brendan Cannon was Dan Vickerman's rugby roommate and his dear friend.
I think it's just such a tragedy that our much-loved mate felt so alone at that moment to do what he did.
Vickerman had struggled with debilitating depression. He had been diagnosed with a mental illness and prescribed medication. He had told friends it had been exacerbated by coming to terms with life after rugby.
A lot of his conversations were around the fact that you go from being a certain type of person one day, the centre of attention, highly supported, highly frameworked and structured in terms of...
So there's a question, is Daniel Vickerman, was he a member of the tribe? I don't know of any evidence of that, but I've had my times in the spotlight when LukeFord.com and was running at its peak. He was getting 10 to 15,000 readers a day. Pretty much every day I was getting interviewed by TV stations, radio stations, newspapers, magazines. I was the object of a tremendous amount of attention, and I was getting, I was very well taken care of by the powers that be around the industry that I was covering because I had, a great deal of influence. And then I quit writing on that world, and all that attention just disappeared, and it did leave a little bit of a void.
What you were doing and the feedback you got to being completely left on your own the next. And I think for many people in the general population, that can seem a little bit precious. And
yeah, so that's why you have to learn to give yourself the attention that you yearn for from others, give yourself the compassion and understanding that you'd like other people to extend to you, and then you won't be as vulnerable to this kind of narcissistic supply being taken away.
What are some of the things that you find yourself worrying about?
Well, I mean, anything. Like, I'll think, are these symptoms ever going to go away? And am I doing everything I need to? Even when I learned about meditating, which I know is supposed to be a good thing and helpful, even when I'm meditating, I'm thinking, am I doing this right? Or am I doing it long enough? Is it really going to help?
Hey, everybody. So
and
I usually...
That's not what I'm supposed to be thinking while I'm meditating.
But it sounds like these thoughts are just relentless.
Yeah.
It's like there's this tyrant in your head that is constantly terrifying you with anything it can, with any ammunition that it could get its hands on.
a lot of people seem to think, oh, well, it can't be that bad. You were doing what you loved as a job.
Suck it up.
Yeah, suck it up. And the difficulty is, I think for athletes, a lot of that journey is all they know. And Dan spoke of that feeling of kind of abandonment in the sense that so much was done for me when I was playing, then now I feel that no one could be bothered kind of calling to see how I'm going.
All of us at different times have had really dark periods post-football, and Dan was no exception, really. He had dark periods away from football in his transition, and we rallied around him, a couple of times, and we thought that we'd managed to navigate him out of the darker periods.
Let's go back 5, throw him in.
In the tight-knit world of Australian rugby, Vickerman's death has opened a wound for the men he played with.
Crouch. Bind.
It's prompted them to speak up about what has remained, until now, largely unsaid.
1, 2,
I think my generation of rugby players are probably very good at holding their cards close to their chest. It's, you know, that generation of men that, you know, bottle it up and man up and be tough. Don't talk about your issues or your problems.
It's a theme that, across Australia and internationally, sporting bodies are grappling with.
Okay, so this issue is not really primarily about sport. It's about human beings. Some people have more resilience than others. And speaking of resilience, speaking of a triumph of the human condition, here's some tweets by Eric Weinstein. It says, I thought a lot about Holocaust Remembrance Day. I have no right to listen politely to critical theory or MAGA or any other movement that insists on lecturing Jews about real suffering and vulnerability. Well, this is just touching on the universal condition, is that it's not natural as a human being to detect different layers of suffering. If you're suffering, you're suffering. If it's a painful tooth or you're on a train to Auschwitz. And it's not the human norm to care about the suffering of outgroups. Eric says, I have an obligation to stop excusing anti-Semitism in struggling communities just because the last 75 years in the US have been pretty good for the Jewish community. About 75 years is the blink of an eye in our long history. So again, people tend to only care about their own group. And so nobody really cares about whether or not Eric Weinstein excuses or does not excuse anti-Semitism in struggling communities around the world. We only care about our own group and usually our own nation. Here are 2 newspapers telling Jews and Japanese to report in Kiev and San Francisco. I made pilgrimages to where we sent Japanese Americans whose possessions we often took. It is sickening what we did to our fellow citizens. Our heart breaks. Right, but Japanese Americans were not executed en masse. They simply moved away from the coast. Right? They could have left the coast of the west coast of America voluntarily. The only ones who were sent into camps were those who did not voluntarily leave the west coast of America. I take the suffering of others seriously. Well, do you really? I guess exceptional people can, but it's just not part of the human condition is to take the suffering of others seriously. Because what happened to Jews is incomparable. That's entirely subjective. Like, how can you compare 4 to 6 million dead Ukrainians in the Holodomor with approximately 6 million Jews dead in the Holocaust? Right, so I don't think it's a good idea, Eric Weinstein, to try to win the suffering Olympics. I tweet about the assassination of Fred Hampton regularly for my black friends. I'm sure they really appreciate that, Eric. I'm sure they're all sitting around cavelling that Eric Weinstein tweets about the assassination of Fred Hampton. Tweet about the abomination of Dodger Stadium and my Latino sister of Chavez Ravine evicted from her home by the city of Los Angeles. Okay, so there's eminent domain. It's not just Latinos who suffer, but there are haunted ravines even more horrible. Well, it only makes sense you'd care primarily about your own group. This year I was repeatedly lectured about Jewish privilege, Jewish fragility, invited to sit in my discomfort for claiming that Jews are vulnerable, often by ethnic minorities who've been indoctrinated within the Ivy League. I'm sorry, I can't muster up any caring about any of this.
How to prepare elite athletes for the crash so many suffer when the game's over.
You definitely can't replicate the adrenaline and the fuel and the buzz you get out of playing.
Look, the game is always going to be over. Life will constantly change. When you get married, the game of sleeping with a variety of women will, for most guys, that will be over. When you quit one job or one career to enter a new career, the thrills that you had with, the career you're leaving behind, they're over and done with. So life is a series of necessary losses, to quote the title of a book by Judith Viorst.
In professional sport, You go from running out onto a stadium with 116,000 people watching and feeling the hairs on the back of your neck rise and singing the national anthem and getting a real, pumped up feeling. And, then you retire. The only time you sing the national anthem is when you go to a school assembly for your kids.
7, 1, 4, 6.
You go from being the king of your domain, where you know exactly what your value is, what your job is, the influence you can have on your teammates, that type of thing. And then all of a sudden, you're standing on your own.
Okay, the chat says, if groups never cared about outgroups, world history would look a lot different. Would it really? Media says, what about colonizing lands and making converts to Christianity? Isn't that outgroups being reached out to? No, colonizing lands was done for the in-group, and making converts is done for the in-group. The whole point of making converts is that it solidifies you in your beliefs that your religion is true. So it wasn't primarily about helping outgroups. There was an element of that, but it came out of the belief in your own in-group that it was superior, that it was divine.
Your own, in a room full of strangers, which are your new work friends, and they're wanting to talk to you about what you used to be, and all you want to focus on is what you want to become. And you're very unsure as to who you are.
If there's any sport that captures the Australian public's imagination, it's swimming.
My American girlfriends have been impressed when they see me like run down the beach, like charge into the beach, find a big wave and just like dive into it. It's like, look, you look like a Greek god, diving into the waves. I'm very comfortable in the ocean. I can very comfortably swim half a mile offshore, just hang out and float, and then swim back. So most Australians at a very early age learn how to swim.
I think it's a feeling like no other, to be in the water, this feeling like you can't really be touched.
I remember I used to like swim way offshore. There were like sharks all around. Didn't realize it, didn't really think about it consciously, but I knew there were sharks going around, but the odds of them doing anything to you were less than you getting hurt in a car accident. And some of my older relatives would say, Luke doesn't respect the ocean.
The highs were incredible, and that feeling doesn't get replicated in day-to-day life.
Isn't that just a beautiful accent? I just feel so happy hearing this beautiful accent by these, healthy, pretty, beautiful Australian athletes.
The elation you feel when you finish the wall, knowing that you've either won or you've done the best that you can, is just something that you can't describe.
But the steady procession of swimmers who have very publicly lost their way draws into sharp relief the difficulties athletes face after.
Okay, so it's not really about athletes. It's not really about the difficulties that athletes face. This is about the type of person who will so wholeheartedly devote themselves to one endeavor is usually not going to be a particularly well-balanced person to begin with.
Retirement.
The perception in my mind was everything else will be downhill from here. I've just reached the pinnacle. This is my lifelong dream. So is everything else here like downhill?
It's a fast time. She's dragging Megan Nay along with her.
Belinda Hocking used to be the best backstroker in the world.
What about this from Belinda Hocking? Just fantastic.
She went to 3 Olympics.
Belinda Hocking!
And won gold at the Commonwealth Games.
Okay, so Ricardo says that Australian accents sound very low class. Are there any
G'day guys, my name is Pete and I'm the host of Aussie English.
Australian.
Welcome to this video.
My sister speaks cultivated Australian.
Today I want to show you the 3 types of Australian accent. Let's go.
So this is my sister here. She speaks cultivated Australian.
So, the next thing that my father taught me was the value of no. We were brought up to believe in vitamin N for no. A lot of my friends at school, they were full of talk about what was on TV, and they'd sing the little advertising jingles, and I was completely in the dark. I didn't have a TV. And they used to be able to have junk food and fast food, and all our food was wholesome and made at home. And I used to look at my friends as I was eating my fruit and my nuts and my vegetable sticks, and they used to have these beautiful white bread sandwiches, and I was thinking, wow, how lucky are they? These beautiful white bread sandwiches. But my father said to me, look, I love you too much to let you have that stuff. We really wished that he didn't love us quite that much at that stage. But I'm very grateful now to the start that he gave us in life. So Dad would explain to us, look, when God says no to something that you want, it's just like you asking me when you were a baby if you could play with fire or put your hand on the hot plate of the stove. God knows what's best for you, and he's only going to let you have what's best for you. So look at those no's as a positive. My father's rock-solid belief in God made him unshockable, and I used to test him out, I assure you. I used to tell him everything because he would never nag me or scold me. He'd listen. I knew that there was nothing I could do to make him love me anymore, and certainly nothing I could do to make him love me any less. But you know, I'll never forget the look of pain and grief on his face the day I told him that I'd fallen in love with my boss, a married man. I can tell you exactly where he was standing, exactly what he looked like. I will never forget that look of pain. You see, in my late teens, I'd rationalised God out of my life because I wanted to follow my desires my way. You know, after making that disclosure to my father, the only thing that changed in our relationship was that I think he prayed a lot harder for me from that point on. He even performed the wedding ceremony for me at my request. Can you believe that? So from that, I learned that God's love for me and for you is totally unconditional.
To help you understand.
Okay, so yeah, I used a Grecian formula between age 27. That's when my hair started to go gray until about age 42. And then at age 42, no more hair dye and no more shaving. I just started growing a beard, becoming who I am. Yeah.
If you're learning Australian English, guys, and you're wanting to perfect that Australian accent, make sure that you hit that subscribe button in English. And a lot of my students have asked me to put this video together to show you guys the main kinds of Australian accent. As you may or may not be aware, there is quite a bit of variation in the Australian accent.
Struth!
Now, we're not going to cover every single variant in today's video. I just want to cover the three main kinds. And they are the cultivated accent.
Hello, I'm Cultivated Pete and I speak Australian English with a cultivated accent.
The general accent.
G'day guys, I'm General Pete and I speak with a general Australian accent. How's it going?
And the broad accent.
Yeah, g'day guys, I'm Broad Pete and I speak Australian English with a broad Australian accent.
Alright, so according to Wikipedia, the cultivated Australian accent has in the past been perceived as indicating high social class or education. It has some similarities to received pronunciation and the transatlantic accent. So some famous Australians who speak with a cultivated accent include actors Kate Blanchett and Geoffrey Rush, as well as ex-Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser. Let's have a listen.
Yes, well no, I actually grew up in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then I came to Sydney to go to the National Institute here and then got catapulted out, and I thought, well, I'll give it 5 years and see what happens.
Johnny Depp's one of the great character actors of our time, I believe.
trapped in a leading man's body. He's got the best of both worlds. He has a brilliantly absurd sense of humour.
Most people aren't aware of it, but 1975 was, I think, the only year since the migration program began when more people left Australia.
Yeah, you blokes are just a bunch of posh cunts.
Well, I never. How unsophisticated.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay out of this one. Right, now the strongest Australian accent. According to Wikipedia, broad Australian English is recognisable and familiar to English speakers around the world. It is prevalent nationwide, but is especially common in rural areas. In Australia, this dialect is sometimes called Strine or Australian, a shortening of the word Australian, and a speaker of the dialect may be referred to as an ochre. Some examples of Australians who speak with a broad Australian accent include ex-Prime Minister Julia Gillard, the crocodile hunter Steve Irwin, and actor Paul Hogan. Let's have a listen.
And I do meet women around the world, and really the only thing they know about Australia is they might know something about kangaroos, something about koalas, and about that speech.
Do you miss the outback? Oh, absolutely. First thing, get off the plane, mate. Didn't go home. Boom, straight into the bush, threw me swag out, camped under the stars, and I was healed up. Piece of cake.
Wonderful and weird at the same time. I had the rare and exotic thing of being the flavour of the month or flavour of the year almost for about a year.
Yeah.
And then it all, if you haven't sort of come out with another blockbuster, it's all over. You're forgotten.
Well, I do believe us posh cunts would refer to you broadies as ochre or bogan, depending on your social proclivities or whether or not you have a job.
Yeah, righto. Fuck off, mate. Yeah, I'm going to avoid this one as well. Last but not least, and the most common Australian accent that you are likely to hear is the general accent, okay? So according to Wikipedia, the general Australian English accent is the most common of Australian accents. It is especially prominent in urban Australia and is used as a standard language for Australian films, television programs, and advertising. So aside from the average Australian, some famous Aussies who speak with a general accent include actors Eric Bana and Hugh Jackman, as well as Olympic swimmer Ian Thorpe. Let's have a listen.
It was so much fun, and I'd sort of forgotten how much fun you can have and are allowed to have at work, you know, because a lot of the movies I work on are, you know, quite dramatic, and sometimes the sets are very, very serious. So to go to work where, you know, laughing your head off all day long was kind of encouraged and you didn't get into trouble was so novel.
2 musicals early on, which shocked me that I was even up for a musical. And I was an actor, theatre actor, really. And then I couldn't get seen for films back in Sydney. This is way back in mid-90s.
Look, I notice where the water moves. I notice, you know, how it's around me. And if, you know, someone's out with their kick, I hear that and I kind of feel it. It does.
Okay, my brother operates a garden centre in Australia. That's... Okay, doesn't seem to be any sound here. What am I missing? Where's the sound, mate? Oh, there's no sound here. So, let's... Okay, this is my brother.
Good morning, gardeners. It's a lovely spring weather, and what a perfect time to plant a standard. How about a standard rose? Great colour, delightful fragrance. White. Once again, great colour. Birds love it, bees love it. Also, you could do a more formal standard. How about lily pillies? They look great, easily trimmed.
So tell him to work on his sound. He needs a microphone.
Make a statement in your garden. Plant a standard.
Okay, where's some more?
When you hear the word corona, what do you think of? Well, I think of lime. I think of Kaffir lime, West Indian lime, Tahitian lime, because nothing goes better with a corona than a slice of lime. And as a special offer for this week, anytime you purchase one of these beautiful limes, I will throw in 1 bottle of corona.
This is my brother at the Tenham Garden Centre. So I think he's got like a general Australian accent. So what else do we have here? Fashion.
Morning, gardeners. Now, you've always known me as a slave to fashion. After all, I've been wearing this same fashionable summer uniform for the last 36 years. But recently, I've had trouble. Some of my family members are actually telling me it makes me look old. Can you believe that? Come on, give me your opinion. Do I need to change my uniform? What would you like me to wear? Fashion is highly disputable, but what is not in dispute is how fashionable our range of indoor pots are, complete with legs. In a lovely range of colours, these are definitely at the height of fashion, even if I'm not.
Okay, back by popular
Do you
demand.
get in trouble by unwanted door knockers and annoying visitors? Are you thinking of getting a guard dog? At Tenham Garden Centre, we have a low-cost, environmentally friendly solution. Agapanthus come in attractive blue and white. Here's how it works. Plant some of these in your yard. Then, simply display this sign on your front gate. You won't get any more trouble.
Okay, no, don't play Arbor on me. Okay, what can we rank these videos by the most popular? How do we rank the videos here? I want to get behind the scenes blooper.
Warning, this film may contain images of dead fish. Well, of course. Pearls, fish emulsion.
Okay. Fishy solution.
Warning, this film may contain images of dead fish. Well, of course, we have Searles fish emulsion. Excellent for foliage plants, herbs and vegetables. Question, why did the fish laugh? Answer, because the seaweed. And we have Searles seaweed fertilizer. Excellent for the same sort of plants. And if you can't make up your mind, we have fish and seaweed. Happy gardening. Winter, the perfect time for fish and chips. Fish, goldfish, $3.95. Cypress chip, $75 a cubic metre.
This afternoon we'd like to talk about herbicides. We often get questions regarding what is the right treatment for which weed, so I will explain the use of some of these sprays. First category is selective weed killers. These are the sort of weed killers you would use on an existing lawn and will not kill your grass. There is a product for most uses. For example, if you have Sir Walter, Buffalo Master will do. If you have a cooch lawn, Lawn Perfect will do the job. The important thing to remember with selective herbicides is do not mow your lawn a week before you spray. Don't mow your lawn for a week after you spray. And always use a wetting agent. A wetting agent helps the product stick to the grass and the weeds and makes it more effective. The other interesting thing about the time you spray the lawn is also important, as in morning sprays are generally better. Second category of herbicide is the total weed killer. These kill all weeds on contact and are generally used as a total weed killer. The active ingredient of these is glyphosate, commonly sold as Roundup in some cases, but the
Okay, catwalk in the rain. This is at my brother's Tenham Garden Centre in Tenham Sands, Australia. That's central Queensland on the coast. Singing in the rain. Some beautiful Australian rain there. The Tenham Garden Centre. Okay, what else we got here? This is my niece. Yeah, that's my sister-in-law and my niece.
We're gonna get strawberries from Paul tomorrow.
What are you doing, Mommy?
Shoveling?
Oh, what are you doing, Lily? Are you shuffling? Okay.
That, but I think your point that elite status had to be earned through sacrifice has died. Now, you suggest we need to get better people. I think that's unlikely. It seems to me we need better incentives. I don't know how we get there from here. Do you have any thoughts on that? How are these institutions going to be rebuilt? How are we going to regain something like that?
Better people, that's, like marrying somebody and hoping they change, That's not going to happen.
Okay.
Different.
So what do you mean? Okay. Oh, different.
Different. And I think different in the sense of, because there are two elements, I would say, to what I guess you would call the elite breakdown. One of them is obviously in behavior. And honestly, you should know if you're going to be in a position of great visibility, that whatever you do is going to come out. It's just going to come out. Nothing stays behind closed walls anymore. So behave in a way as if everybody was watching you, no matter what you're doing, even in your bedroom. So that's number one. Number two is the rhetoric. The rhetoric of the elites today is really something. It is really something. For a Hillary Clinton to say that half of Trump voters are deplorable people in a kind of a abominable way, racist and so forth, for a politician to say that, that's a remarkable thing. Well, in France, when they had the yellow vest, one of basically the top parliamentarian for the ruling party said, the problem is our policies are too sophisticated. They said, and people don't understand them. So this is a sense that, you're dealing with these yahoos out there who are completely ignorant of your expertise and scientific training. And so I think when I talk about different, people who have been raised on the web talk different. They don't talk that way, all right? There is an awareness, because when you only say that when you know you're not going to be looking at a deplorable in the eye and say, by the way, you are deplorable. People who have been raised on the web know that they're looking at their audience in the eye, and that the audience is going to explode right back at you if you use the wrong kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think actually it might go the other way. I think there's a willingness on the part of the media, political leaders to call the other side deplorable more readily, because it signals virtue to their followers. I feel like we've become, on the left and the right, increasingly disrespectful of people who don't think the way we do. I see that on both sides, and I see the web amplifying that tremendously. Now, part of the way it does that is through anonymity, right? The ability on the web, at least in theory, to be anonymous is part of that. But there are plenty of people I follow on the web who have named accounts on Twitter who say things that are just disrespectful of people on the other side, on the left and the right. And I think a democracy can't handle that very well. I think about Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, which we talked about on this program, and how if it's all us and them, but the way he said it, which I think is spectacular, is if you think that the other side is betraying your country, which I think right now is the world we're in, it's not just in America, it's in England, it's in all over the world. If you think your political opponent is betraying the nation, you're essentially accusing them of treason, which historically has merited the death penalty. And a lot of people, I think, are increasingly comfortable with the fact that they don't deserve a voice. I don't know how democracy sustains itself in that environment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, you were asking me how it can change, and I'm pointing to some possibilities. The incentives are in the other direction. And I would add another layer to that even, which is a couple of layers. One is that in the internet, if you're a moderate, who's going to pay attention to you? You need to shout. Yeah. And the angrier your shout is, the more pronounced your profile. And the more you can find somebody on the other side who shouts back at you, engaged in these kind of like, we have kind of don't believe in right and left right now. I don't believe in Republican and Democrat. I think we're fractured. We're fractured in these war bands, and they're like something out of the barbarian age, where they go looking for combat that will earn them undying fame, which of course in the digital age is more like brief attention, right? That's the equivalent. But the incentives are all for that, and no question about that. And the second part is, our society has changed very drastically, so that a lot of importance, a lot of existential meaning is freighted down on politics. Okay, religion seems to be less of a thing.
So I'm playing an excerpt from Econ Talk with host economist Russell Roberts interviewing ex-CIA media analyst Martin Gurri on the Revolt of the Public, Martin Gurri's 2014 book.
Locality and community, less of a thing. Even family, when you think about it, it is way less of a thing. These are the things that we used to get our meaning from. So I think when you find these eruptions of powerful emotions. I think Arnold Kling says one thing the web has done is broken down the distance between the small world we live in and the big world that we don't really see. It's in the small world that all our powerful emotions are linked to, our significant others, our families, our religion, our community. Now we're focusing all of that on politics, and if in that mode you find somebody who you disagree with, it's not just, well, you go your way and I'll go mine. It's like you are kind of violating the principles of my religion now.
Yeah, I think that's very true, or at least I'm drawn to that. I don't know if it's very true or not. It's hard to know whether it's true. It's a nice narrative.
I've been trying to, that is, I agree with you 100%. I can't prove it. It is one of those things that existential side to the Revolt of the Public is something that if you can think of a way to prove that, because I've been rooting around in my research, but that is what seems to be happening.
What is true is what you said to start with. All of these previous institutions are fraying. Family is clearly fraying, the traditional family, whatever you want to call it. Many, many fewer young people are getting married. Fewer people are staying married. At any point in time, there are fewer married people. They're having fewer children. Church attendance is down. Now, there may be a pendulum. Both those things may come back. But right now, we're at a time where, as you point out, the things that traditionally gave people meaning, a sense of self, whatever you want to call it, tradition, are not what they once were. And I'm drawn deeply to David Foster Wallace's observation that everybody worships. His glorious graduation commencement address speech, which we'll link to, where he says, everyone worships. So worship something that stood the test of time. He says, if you worship money, it will betray you. If you worship beauty, it will betray you. Worship something higher than yourself, not yourself. And that's a deep insight. I think to some extent, politics is something higher than ourselves. I think people aspire to a transformation, a utopian transformation, a messianic transformation through the political sphere that they used to use the religious sphere to satisfy. But that's cheap talk. I want to take a different approach.
Okay, what happens to athletes after they leave, after they retire?
But she's gone from sporting glory to a job hunt that's lasted 6 months. Recently, she found herself queuing up at Centrelink.
So Centrelink's the Australian Unemployment Office. She does have a husband.
I walked in there and they said, well, what have you done? And I said, I'm a triple Olympian, I've been swimming. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And you go from 5 minutes of people saying that's amazing.
Yeah, I remember I met people, oh, well, 40, you're on 60 Minutes, why are you looking for a job? Well, just being on 60 Minutes doesn't guarantee you a job for life. I remember various porn stars who, say, appeared in Playboy, and they felt like then it was incumbent upon Playboy to take care of them for life, or incumbent upon Vivid Video to take care of them for life. After all, they spread their legs for Vivid Video. Surely Vivid will take care of them for life. Doesn't work that way.
You've had such an incredible journey, or I wish I had been to an Olympics. And
I love her look. I love her eyes. Wow, I could get lost in her eyes if she wasn't married.
They're more employable than what I am. You put on the top of your resume, triple Olympian, dual Commonwealth Games gold medalist, and I still haven't heard back from 10 jobs that I've applied for. I've been told numerous times of lack of experience, and how was I meant to get that experience when what I was doing was being an elite athlete?
Belinda Hocking even struck out when she applied for an admin job at Swimming Australia.
I'm not upset at the organisation for that, but it makes me feel pretty shit about my life, because if I can't get a job at the organisation that I've been a part of for 13 years, it doesn't really hold much hope for the rest of my career opportunities. It's been really hard, I'm sorry. You go from something that you're the best in the world at, and I can happily say that I was the best at the world at what I did. And you've got a lot of people around you saying that the skills that you have are transferable and that you'll get a job quite easily.
Okay, so this isn't primarily about athletics, all right? If you have friends, if you belong to a religious community or an ethnic community, people will find ways for you to find a job. So it's tempting to blame this, say, on the swimming career or the athletic career, but I think it ties into much deeper issues. Some people are just perennial under-owners. They're used to selling themselves short.
That hasn't happened. It's been really hard.
Put the name in lights. Stephanie Rice breaks the world record.
Everything that I knew about myself and prided myself on, my confidence, came from swimming.
Look out, Beijing. Here comes Stephanie.
So take away the vehicle that gave me all of those feelings and all of that pride and confidence. It was like, who is Stephanie Rice? Because I only knew Stephanie Rice, the swimmer.
She's going to get another world.
Okay, so what type of person, though, is particularly prone to thinking that who they are is live streamer, who they are is blogger, who they are is a swimmer? That's someone who's fundamentally ill at ease with themselves, who is not comfortable with themselves, who's not able to give themselves the attention, compassion, understanding that they so yearn for, recognition that they yearn for from other people. And so they put all their eggs in one basket.
After she smashed world records and won 3 gold medals at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Stephanie Rice was the ultimate swimming superstar.
Stephanie Rice, you are a sensation.
One night I was the golden girl, triple Olympic gold medalist, and then wake up the next morning to be the worst person in the entire world.
Stephanie Rice's teammates have described a homophobic slur she made on Twitter as out of character.
Stephanie Rice's fall from grace began when a stupid tweet in which she used the word faggots went viral.
The offensive comment was removed late yesterday.
Oh, my God. Well, you just can't talk that way. I mean, that's so offensive. Suck on that. F words, probably the best game I've ever seen. Well done, boys. Wow, that's just vile.
Today.
Actually, it was my mum that was like, do you know what faggot means? And I was like, no. I just didn't. And so then she had to explain her generation what it was like. And then I was like, okay, I understand how it's been received now. And I was copying 500 messages or more a day.
And Ricardo notes, Luke, defining oneself by your professional progression is a huge feature of DC culture. I'm surprised it's not the same in LA. It is, but it is in part, and it depends on you. So what about your friends? What about your family? What about your hobbies? What about your religion? So if you belong to a church or a synagogue, there's a certain egalitarian ethos, and you are not just your professional accomplishments. But if you don't have a church, you don't have a synagogue, you don't have, say, a broad circle of friends, you don't have hobbies, then you're going to be much more susceptible to simply understanding yourself according to, the one thing you do that gets the most public attention. So if you're not comfortable with yourself and with giving and receiving love between you and your friends and your family, then the easiest substitute is to reach for attention. That's certainly what I have done over the course of my life. I wasn't particularly able to be kind and considerate and caring and thoughtful and respectful towards myself. And I wasn't able to develop enough, kind, understanding friendships with other people. And so I had this huge yearning for just a maximum of attention to try to fill the bottomless pit in my soul.
Of just complete hate. And okay, how do I get through this? Because I liked all the good stuff, but I'm not really prepared for all the bad stuff.
I just really owe it to everyone to apologise for what's happened, and I want people to know how sorry I am for what's happened.
Rice never recovered her former Olympic glory.
So in Los Angeles, I think there's a lot more acceptance. It's quite common for, say, people who are on a network TV show, but they end up working in an office. So in Los Angeles, people hire, child stars. They hire people who are on network TV shows all the time. So it's much more understood and accepted that you can be very much in the public eye, but still need a job a year later.
She was dogged by injury, and she was bitterly disappointed at her final games in London.
I think I've done absolutely everything that I could have done. It's been really tough.
She fell into a slump after the games and felt a failure.
Just a long slog of being at the bottom and not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. And that lasted for at least 2 years.
Stephanie Rice's good friend is Grant Hackett.
We'll talk about that in due course.
Hackett has been in rehab after spectacularly going off the rails. Rice isn't surprised at how many athletes go down this path.
You are now in this position of being 25 to 30 and having no clue what you're going to do with the next 50 years of your life. And all your peers and everyone else around you has already gone through that when they were, 17, 18 at uni, figuring it out. And now they're in their journey. They're like working to be a doctor or whatever. And you're like, I have no idea what I want to do. And so that was brutal because you just get robbed of everything that you believe that you are and figure out that it was all external. It was all based on other people giving me the confidence, not actually being confident inside.
Start off with lunges. Make sure that your knees don't track over your ankles.
Stephanie Rice has now come out the other side.
Really feel the burn in the bum.
She's a businesswoman who designs swimwear and promotes health and fitness products. But Belinda Hocking is still finding her feet.
We put these athletes up on these pedestals and we want their autographs and we want their signatures and we want every little piece of them while they're being an athlete. But as soon as they're not that athlete, we don't care.
If you were someone who had an underlying mental health problem, how do you think you would cope with all
I'd want to
of this?
hurt myself. I think I definitely want to hurt myself because there was a time a couple of weeks ago I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want people to see me because I was so sick of people asking me what I was doing and asking me if I'm okay. And for someone that's...
So this is the Sheila who did that ABC Four Corners program on Liberal Party members who were having some extracurricular dalliances in Canberra, that hotbed of sexual excess. So I'm surprised that Belinda Hocking does not mention that she's married and by all appearances happily married.
Been all over the world to then someone that doesn't want to leave their house.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
In the Olympian community alone, there's over 100 who've committed suicide, and that's including gold medalists. It's not just people who haven't made it in the sport or struggled, it's people who've been absolute stars in the sport.
Right. Well, it takes a certain type of person who's going to be so obsessive, so dedicated that they are going to do well in the Olympics. And this type of person is perhaps less likely than average to be well balanced. Also, the hit of fame and the hit of mass media attention is incredibly powerful, and some people can't handle it and would have been better off never having experienced it.
Who've struggled.
Hocking is doing a degree in teaching and classes in animal studies. Several weeks after we met her, she got a part-time job as a medical receptionist.
I am optimistic and I'm upbeat. I think you have to be. It was a pretty bad week last week. There was lots of crying and not knowing what I'm going to do, but I think you just have to look towards the future and, hope one day that you'll wake up knowing what you want to do.
And my favorite nihilist, half Galician, says, look, you are conflating media success with Olympic champions. A shoddy apples to oranges comparison. Olympic success is not a conflation of nonsense. It is true and it is unassailable.
I think all of us involved in the sport could put our hands on our hearts and say, listen, we weren't doing enough to prepare our swimmers for life away from the pool, and that's something that's been addressed.
Okay, Babs, what's going on, bro?
The peak.
Not much. Have you been watching your Glenn Greenwald?
Here and there, mate.
He's been getting incredibly based.
Yeah, he's always had a based component. He's my favorite based Brazilian homosexual news commentator.
Have you seen his new husband, man?
Don't recall. I haven't really spent a lot of time.
Check it out. Look up Glenn Greenwald, new husband. Tell me what you think.
Okay, new husband for Glenn Greenwald. Thank you, Babs.
I heard a rumor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. What did you hear a rumor about, Luke?
Oh, well, I'll tell you. I'm not afraid to tell you, because who needs friends who never show? I'll tell you what you want to know. I could have saved a broken heart if I had found out long ago. I'm just thinking about those lonely nights when I waited for your call till I found out all my friends were right. I didn't know you at all. Now it seems they're telling me you've changed your wicked ways. But should I give you a second chance? Baby, I'm too afraid. So you realize what hurt you made and the love you threw away. How can I forgive or soon forget? It's never going to be the same.
So when are we going to be able to tune in for a limited edition screening of Apricot Sky, director's cut?
Well, how much money does it cost to transfer a VHS to DVD? So
not that much money. And why would you want to transfer it to DVD?
Well, I have to transfer it somehow to be able to show it on YouTube.
So you're transferring it from one archaic medium to a slightly less archaic one.
I'm transferring it from one medium that I can't upload to YouTube to a medium that I can't upload to YouTube.
You could probably just get it digitized to a computer. I'm sure there are machines that do that. There are machines that do it for a tape. So I assume for a small tape, like a tape of music, a cassette. So I assume that it should work for a VCR.
Yeah, I looked it up. So everything from, I don't know, $10, $20, $50, $100. They got all these different ads.
It's going to be under $100 unless it's some ridiculous ship it in super high quality thing. But I'm sure that there's a local place that'll be able to do that for you. That's within a drive of Pico Robertson. But
I have to see how much public demand there is to see Apricot Sky. I mean,
okay, I would pay to see Apricot Sky. I would pay
up to $100 to see Apricot Sky.
20.
You'll pay $20. Okay, so I can count on you for a $20 donation if I digitize Apricot Sky. I mean,
all right. Would you just ask your audience? We can crowdsource this. Okay, we can work together. We can crowdsource this. All right. Okay. So
what do you need?
Exactly. Yeah. No. There's this new wave of radicalized normies, dude. They're watching Louis Rossman and fucking Glenn Greenwald.
Based.
They're coming, man. They post on Reddit, you know. Radicalized internet boys. Here they come. Here's the thing, man. Like they're centrists. They're angry. They're populists. They don't think they've been given a fair shake, mate. They don't think it's fair dinkum.
Oh. And what are some of their analyses that have grabbed your attention?
I mean, they're not saying anything particularly special. They're just you know Glenn Greenwald, like his whole shtick is like, you know, criticizing intelligence states. And recently Glenn Greenwald has been like geeking out, rightfully so, and he's like one of the only people who's doing it. So it's him geeking out, one of the only people on the quote unquote left, or one of the only people who's a liberal or whatever, who's like really coming in and like basically he went full populist. You know, he's attacking intelligence institutions, big tech, you know, finance capital. He's attacking he's attacking like institutions, basically, the media. You know, he's attacking like the defense of institutional power. You know, he's mocking those who defend institutional power, and he's attacking institutional power. You know, he's gone full same. You know, and Jimmy Dore, I mean, has been this way for a while. You know, and like, you know, this type of, you know, non-right populism, man, this has been coming for a while, dude. Now it's like, you know, it's like the stuff that Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald say is the exact same stuff that you can say if you listen to What's Left or Red Scare. Like I don't know, man, it's epic. It's epic. Like you know, we're times are changing, man. People, dude, we have to create a more safe internet, and we have to you know, push towards the back some of the more dangerous political voices so that we can all just get along and consume in peace, okay? We don't want any violent or dangerous rhetoric that could cause mental harm to people.
Hey, do you think Kevin Michael Grace would review Apricot Sky on a Theatre Thursday?
Absolutely. I think it's a pick for the next Criterion Collection set.
Maybe you'll even get picked up and get a syndicator. Like,
yeah, boy.
It's not
That'd be
getting
amazing, man.
rolled out. They can roll it out first in Japan. I'm big in Japan.
You'll become a cult classic, man, I swear. I really think that I don't know. On the subject of Kevin Michael Grace, like, this is his time, man. This is the populism he was happy about. This is the populism he wanted. And this is the populism he wanted. Like, you know, he was fighting with Kyle about this, what, a year or two ago? Now here, you've got what you wanted, Kevin. Things are shifting in that direction. People really are waking up between Gamestonk and, you know, like, you know, criticisms of, like, you know, institutional power, Gamestonk, force the vote, you know, people dissatisfied with election results, people dissatisfied with the bailouts and how the stimulus money is being handled, and general like institutional bailouts and revolving door and other kind of like nepotistic behavior and oligarchic, like keep the money at the top stuff. You know, people don't want a plutocracy, Liz, and people are really waking up. Kevin, you should be in the middle of this. You should be going on Jimmy Dore and What's Left and Red Scare. He should go on. I don't understand why Kevin Michael Grace doesn't have an RT show. Like, he's perfect for it. He should be scooped up by RT. Don't you agree?
It's an Apricot Sky.
Yes.
Like, he's way better than Kaiser or any of these schmucks, and he's actually like legit. Like, he's an old head with the you know, all the press credentials, and he's actual like real deal fucking big boy journalist. So like, I don't understand why RT doesn't just snap him up for RT Canada. You can talk about how fucking, you know, Trudeau is a fucking lib and sucks or whatever. It's and how there needs to be populism in Canada. And RT would support it because it's like, yes, this will make the Anglo access weaker. They're like yes, let's push Kevin Michael Grace into like a dagger into the heart of the Anglo Imperium to strengthen Russia and make sure that they're less of a problem for us.
What I think this world really needs is a 2020 remake of Apricot Sky, because I weigh 15 pounds less than I did then, so I look much better. If I just dyed my hair, I could totally play 26 again.
Dude, that's insane, man.
It'd be off the hook,
wow,
bro.
an Apricot Sky. Man, I don't know, man. I think that Apricot Sky will be one of the first demands made by the populist revolutionaries.
And people can compare.
Power. They'll want a release of Apricot Sky, straight to fucking big screen, baby.
Yeah, and then they could compare and contrast it. They could make it a double
Joyce
feature
booked in?
with What Women Want. So they could compare and contrast maybe how I've grown as an actor and a performer between Apricot Sky and What Women Want. It's kind of the ultimate double feature. Okay, blessings.
So in terms of Australia-themed songs, like how do you rank them? All right, so you've got like all the classics. You've got Do You Come From a Land Down, or what's it called? You know, that's a classic song about Australia. Then you've got another classic, Waltzing Matilda, and then you've got what else have we got?
Tie My Kangaroo Down, Spot.
You've got Working Class Man by Jimmy Barnes. Oh, he's a working class man. What else you got? Classic songs about Australia and Australian life.
Oh, The Pub With No Beer.
I don't know that one. Can you sing a verse?
Oh, sure. Okay. Oh, it's a lonesome. Oh, no. I know a song I like even. Oh, I'll do The Pub With No Beer. Oh, it's a lonesome away from your kindred and all. By the campfire at night, we hear the wild dingoes call. But there's nothing so lonesome, morbid or drear than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer. Now the publican's anxious for the quota to come, and there's a faraway look on the face of the bum. The maid's gone all cranky, and the cook's acting queer. Oh, what a terrible place is a pub with no beer. Then the stockman rides up with his dry, dusty throat. He breasts up to the bar and pulls a wad from his coat, but the smile on his face quickly turns to a sneer as the barman says sadly, the pub's got no beer. Then the swaggy comes in, smothered in dust and flies. He throws down his roll and rubs the sweat from his eyes. But when he is told, he says, what's this I hear? I've trudged 50 flamin' miles to a pub with no beer. And then there's the G'day, G'day song. I think this is my favorite. G'day, G'day, how you going? What do you know? Well, strike a light. Where's my lighter? Okay, what do you know? Well, strike a light. G'day, G'day, and how you doing? Just say G'day, 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 and you'll be right. Isn't it great to be an Aussie, taking a walk along the street, looking in shops or buying a paper, stopping and having a yarn with people that you meet down at the pub or at a party, whenever you're stuck for what to say. If you want to be dinky-die, why don't you give it a try? Look 'em right in the eye and say, G'day, 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 how you going? What do you know? Well, strike a light. G'day, G'day, and how you going? Just say, G'day, 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 and you'll be right. Now, when Italians meet, they all go crazy. The blokes all like to hug each other, too. The Yanks invented hi and see you later, while the Pommy will shake your hand and say, how do you do? Now watch out for a Frenchman, or he'll kiss you. The Spaniards go for hola and ole, but in the land of the cockatoo, polecats and the didgeridoo, when you meet an Aussie 10 to 1, here's what he'll say. G'day, g'day. It's a greeting you'll hear across Australia, from Geraldton to Goulburn to Gundagai. It's as dinkum as the dingo and the dahlia, and you spell it with a G apostrophe A-D-A-Y. G'day, g'day. What do you think, Babs? G'day, g'day. How you going?
I think it's beautiful. I love that part where you're talking about how all the different nationalities act, and yeah, I think it's a great little ballad. What's it called?
G'day, g'day.
Ditty. G'day, g'day. G'day, g'day. Can you change your accent, like make it sound more broad and Australian-y? If you like, how much can you do that, like, voluntarily?
Oh.
If you want it to be like really,
I'd have to.
Oh yeah, mate.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, mate. I'd have to put a little bit. Oh, there's no Australian.
Drink some kangaroo oil.
Yeah, there's an old Australian stockman lying, dying, and he gets himself up onto one elbow and he turns to his mates who are all gathered around and he says, "Watch me wallabies feed, mate. Watch me wallabies feed. They're a dangerous breed, mate. So watch me wallabies feed. All together now, tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Let my abos go loose, Bruce. Let my abos go loose. They're of no further use, Bruce. So let my abos go loose. All together now, tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Keep my cockatoo cool, cool. Keep my cockatoo cool.
Is that a euphemism?
Don't go
To
acting
keep your
the fool.
cockatoo cool?
Cool. Just keep me cockatoo cool. All together now. Take me koala back, Jack. Take me koala back. He lives somewhere out on the track, Mac. So take me koala back. All together now. And mind me platypus duck, Bill. Mind me platypus duck. Don't let him go running amok, Bill. Just mind me platypus duck. All together now. Play your didgeridoo, Blue. Play your didgeridoo. Like, keep playing till I shoot through, Blue. Play your didgeridoo.
Is this a real song, Luke?
Yeah, talk me kangaroo down. Tan me hide when I'm dead. Fred, tan me hide when I'm dead. So we tanned his hide when he died, Clyde, and that's it, hanging on the shed. All together now, tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Oh, that's a beauty. Man, Rolf Harris and I, when we used to perform all across Australia. And boy, the kiddies loved that song. The little kiddies loved that song. Rolf and I, we were huge back in the 70s. Good old Rolf Harris, he got a bum deal.
Rolfie. So I'm curious how you didn't know what a bunyip was. I knew what a bunyip was. You didn't even know what a bunyip was. You've been in Australia in all these years and you sing about tying the kangaroo down.
What's a bunyip?
We've been over this, Luke. A bunyip is like a mythical creature in Aboriginal lore. This is what walked Australia before people like you ever invaded.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Look it up, bunyip, B-U-N-Y-I-P. Do you see it?
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah. But Rolf Harris, man, he got accused of abusing little kids, but Rolf Harris did nothing wrong, bro.
You feel it all over your skin. It's good. It's so feeling you want to give somebody a big hug like that, or one of those little pats.
What's the defense here, Ford?
It's that sort of touching.
Oh, it's just the liberal media.
The prosecution said his sexual interest in this one alleged victim was not an isolated aberration.
Trust the plan. Okay,
the jury will hear from 3 other women who alleged that they too were abused by the children's entertainer when they were young.
Than exploratory.
The jury was told this was
listen, man. He's playing 5e chess here. Okay, this is all part of the plan.
The evidence the prosecution said
Benedictory.
shows that Rolf Harris had a sexual interest in underage girls.
He's running things from inside jail, man. He actually wanted to go to jail to protect himself because of all the fucking mob bosses that were out for his head. Anyway, I don't want to stay on the Australianism too long. I didn't mean to bring the show on a tangent. I'm sorry to the audience. I wanted to respond to a point that I think it was Half Galician made in the chat, right? So Half Galician says Glenn Greenwald is based now because, now that he quote unquote left the left, he's appealing to Tucker people. There are a few ways to view this, but I actually disagree with that analysis. I think that there are more and more people quote unquote leaving the left every day, but usually when people leave the left, they become like a classical liberal, like alt-right capitalist grifter. Like that's how it used to be, I feel like, for a lot of them. But now there are new spaces. When people leave the left, they often leave the left into new spaces. And I mean, yes, there is kind of a Venn diagram. Like if you look at someone like Eric Weinstein, right? Like Weinstein, whatever it is. Like Eric Weinstein, he goes on podcasts with Anna Kachian and talks to, Peter Thiel, but also, but will also talk to like Project Veritas people, and we'll also talk to intellectual dark web, like Dave Reuven, like I'm a classical liberal, like dweebs, so it's like so like why are left dweebs? So like yes, there is a Venn diagram intersection point, but I feel like there are more and more people who don't leave the left. They go just straight into true populism. It's like there was this for a while. There was like this kind of like steam valve of leaving the left and turning into like, oh, I'm a classical liberal. But like that has completely changed. The days of Sargon of Akkad and Dave Rubin are over. The new spaces for people who leave the left, and I think that it's not just people leaving the left, right? So I think that it's different things, right? I think that some people are leaving the left. Some people are leaving the left. A la Glenn Greenwald, a la some of them, like, a la, you could argue, like, an Angela Nagel type and Anna Kachian type. But again, like, I'm not even sure if that's even leaving the left. It's basically just like, it's leaving like the left quadrant, the capital L left, right? And so there are people like that, but then there are also people who are, I think, who are just centrists, who are just or politically apathetical, who are just watching, and they're just or people who stay in touch with politics, but who aren't politically particularly opinionated or vocal themselves. And there are a few people like that, or so people who care about one issue, let's say, like, and I feel like that was a lot of Greenwald people. Like, there was people who cared a lot about surveillance or stuff like that, and they're like, what the like, what is this? What is going on? The party that I voted for, the Democratic Party, that's ostensibly on the side of like our guys and the good guys, is like defending these deep state intelligence agencies, and so it's like, come on. And then I think that there are also people who are leaving the right, and when I say leaving the right, I mean like leaving the like the capital R right, like the conservative Republican Party project. Like, I think that there are a lot of equally many people who are getting frustrated with that, and it's like they're the same as people who are leaving the left. It's not really leaving the left is the wrong way to look at it, right? I think that these are all people who are becoming a form of populist, and I think this centrist populist thing, Lewis Rossman populism, I think may actually become like, I think that a lot of people are going to go from being completely, or not completely apolitical, but just being like kind of bog standard, like, I'm just a member of liberal capitalist society and I just kind of go along to get along. And, I think Trump is silly, and I think, Biden and Hillary are kind of corrupt, and like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, but like, I feel like these people are going to increasingly like a lot of these people are first time politically engaging. Like, a lot of the people, who are becoming populist now. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just, this is just the trends that I think are emerging. So it's not even a question of leaving the left half deletion, right? I think that that's a wrong way of viewing it. That's like an old school, like cringe, like Dave Rubin era thing, and it's like, that's not what it's about. Actually, it's really just a question of like, people everywhere are growing, dissatisfied with institutions. Basically, all the stuff that Kyle said that wasn't going to happen is happening. And all the stuff that Kyle said was like a loser, non-starter thing. It's like, that's all going to happen, and people are going to get dissatisfied with institutions, and it's the game stonk it up. I think that it's not a question of leaving the left, right? Left and right, we really need to stop thinking in these terms. I know that everything I'm saying is like hackneyed and has been said a million times before, but this is really important. Like, it's insider and outsider. It's up versus down. It's not left versus right anymore. And the quicker we can kind of switch to that paradigm, the better it is. What do you think, Luke?
I think I gotta go. So blessings to you, Babs, and take care. To be continued. Half Galatian says in the chat, good point, populism has right and left vectors that overlap. The bad GameStop takes are examples of idiot pandering by Tucker Carlson and Glenn Greenwald. So blessings to the audience. Peace out, good night, and God bless. Okay, wait, is my brother having a nice breakfast? Show him what you're show the